Oh, we got a link to the Dave Smith thing. Premiere will begin shortly. Okay. Perfect. Let's go. Bro, you can super chat a video premiere? All right. That's crazy. Who the fuck would super chat a video? Like, it's not even live. Oh, I guess it's going live right now. Here we go. Here we go. Oh shit. I hate the YouTube Premiere music. I really do. I hate the YouTube Premiere music. All right, we'll watch this. We'll watch this. Oh, this better not be like 2 hours long though, I swear. Give me a nice hour. A nice hour-long convo would be terrific, and then I can go and fuck off and go do my thing. It is 3 hours long. This is 3 hours long, dog. I'm cooked. I am cooked. We're already at 3 hours on the... Dude, I'm gonna do... There's no... No, 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 no. No. No, 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 no. No. I'm cooked. All right. Lock in. Lock in. I guess we're doing this. I guess we're doing this. I don't want the chat. I don't want the chat. I don't want to see the chat.
Nicholas Fuentes, welcome back.
Yeah, good to be back. How's
Lock
it going?
in, boys.
Good, man. Good. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. It's what was it, like 6-7 months ago? You were here? Well, it was in October. It was on October 7th. So now I remember.
A little bit of a dog whistle.
We put it out on October 8th.
We did that intentionally.
I couldn't.
That was our plan.
Dude, it was I remember whenever we were trying to make it work, I remember we were like texting and I was like, "Oh, can you do the 10th?" And you were like, "I can't do the 10th. Can you do the 6th?" And I was like, "I can't do the 6th. 7th?" And we were both like, "Oh, we can do the 7th." And then it was the moment after, I think we both realized we're like, we just booked this on October 7th, didn't we? This is going to get taken the wrong way. Anyway, October 8th. Okay, so about 7 months ago, since you were here, that episode was my most viewed podcast I've ever done.
Wow.
By far. It was, I think, it got like 4 million views or something like that. I know it broke 2 million on YouTube. It broke 1 million on Spotify. And then I think between the others got it on. So anyway, I had Tucker and Candace on my show in that stretch. But our episode was the most viewed one, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I mean, obviously those guys are enormous. I'm not trying to downplay that, but it was something particularly interesting. You're a guy who, because you've been so censored off so many platforms, it's almost hard to get a gauge of like how big you are, if that makes sense, because it's like your clips are everywhere. The clips are, so it's not like you're exactly getting a total view count of like how many millions of people have seen all these clips. And because you can't go, you're still not allowed, which is very weird in a way, because in a sense, it feels like we're living after the big censorship moment.
Right.
And it feels like you're clearly one of the biggest people in this world, but you still can't have a YouTube channel. You don't really have a Twitter account?
Yeah, no.
Right?
I'm not
the
eligible
volume.
for X Premium.
Yeah,
And here's the other thing. What's funny is, so, we consider doing advertisements on the show this year. I've never done advertisements before, and so we approached some of the sponsors.
Let me have a Jewish conversation with you here, Nick. You need advertising.
Yeah, I'm leaving money on the table, I think, without it. But, we go to them, and obviously they want the analytics because they want to know the demographics we're reaching and how big the audience is. And what's funny is something like Twitter, in order to get your analytics on Twitter to see age, race, etc., you need premium. So it's like not only can I and my team, we can't even access the platforms, even on the ones we have, can't even get the numbers. So we can't even supply the numbers to get paid by a sponsor. So, yeah, I mean, when you're censored, it's like there's no records. It's
Right.
like a book burning thing, because it's like you just have none of the information available at all.
Which in a weird way just seems bad for everyone. Like, I'm not sure who benefits from that, because it's kind of like at this point, they're in this weird, I don't know, like gray area where you're like, well, it's not okay. At a point 5 years ago, 8 years ago, it was at least working to shut you up to some degree. It was relegating you to a corner. At this point, it's like you're all over the algorithm everywhere, and all it creates is this situation like that where you're like, in some ways, it's like maybe they don't want it to be known exactly how big you are. But I don't know. I found that to be very interesting. Yeah. So I wanted a bunch of stuff I want to talk to you about. A lot's happened since last time we talked.
Yes.
Jeez. Most of it not good. But so I was watching, I talked to you briefly about this when we first came in. So I was watching today. So I watched a buddy of mine, Dave Brenner, runs a great YouTube channel called Liberty Vault. He had done like a comment on your debate with Steven Crowder. So I had watched that, but I hadn't actually watched the thing. So I was watching that this morning. I had a similar debate with Steven Crowder months earlier, but a similar type of debate over supporting the Republicans, supporting Trump. And there was just something about this debate that I just found painful. Like, it's painful to listen to. And I don't mean this as like an attack on Steven Crowder. You know, I didn't love the way he handled the interview with me, but whatever. You know, recently, just the other day, Andrew Wilson, who I like very much, he challenged me to debate like a similar type thing, like whether we should support Democrats or whether Democrats should win the midterms. And I was like, why don't we just debate the war? Why don't we just like keep it a little bit more narrow? And he was like, well, no, because I'm opposed to the war too. But I was like, yeah, but clearly there's a pretty big gap between how opposed you are and how opposed I am. And I think that gets at the heart of it. There is something particularly about the debate, like, should we support the Republicans? One of the problems is that it's very, very broad. So a million different issues get inserted, and then they run down a list of like all the accomplishments of the regime. And I was kind of trying to narrow it. But I was thinking a bit about why this argument is frustrating me so much. You know, like why it's so frustrating. And I don't exactly know why. Like, why do you think it's frustrating me so much?
I don't know. I mean, I was a little frustrated too. And I guess the way I would summarize it is that I don't know that it's disingenuous, but it's almost missing the forest for the trees. Would be maybe the best way to say it, because I remember I was talking to some buddies about the debate afterward, and I like Steven. I thought it was a good debate, good faith. But I said on literally every single issue, you're getting the GOP talking point. You're getting the memo. Like on Iran, for example, I remember when they launched the war, everybody obviously said, well, what happened to no new wars? And is this not literally identical to Iraq? It's this question about WMDs and they're killing the protesters and, you know, we're going to do regime change and make it a democracy. Like very similar in many ways, especially how it played out in the lead up to the war. And everybody obviously recognizes that's a deep fundamental betrayal of Trumpism, which was always about bringing the troops home from Iraq and Afghanistan, putting America first, the rest of it. And I remember what the Republicans said on Twitter is, well, Trump always said we were going to war with Iran because he said they should never have a nuclear weapon. And then the other thing they said was, well, he said no forever wars. And the real forever war is the war Iran has been waging on us, and we're putting an end to it. And you go, yeah, that really stretches the bounds of what anybody could credibly believe, you know, in good faith. And so that was something that came up in the debate, and you just go, yeah, no, you're kind of missing the point here. Like, if he campaigned on we're going to bomb Iran for regime change for years in a war of choice, I don't think anybody'd be lining up to vote for that. He said no new wars, and now they want to introduce this technicality to kind of get out of that. So to me, that really characterizes, I don't know that it's bad faith, but it almost feels like you're arguing with a brick wall. It's like you're not really being totally honest.
Dude, there's a certain, I've been talking about this a lot lately, but there's a certain like category of kind of MAGA influencers or whatever. And I'm not talking about like the Israel lobby. Like I'm not talking about Ben Shapiro or Barry Weiss or something like that. I'm talking about,
wait, why did Lauren get timed out?
Or Steven Crowder or Will.
Okay, I gotta remove fucking Michael Leinhart's mod now.
It feels like, as you're saying here, right? They go, okay, so the talking point is, we've been at war with them for 47 years and ending the wars. Okay, well, if it's been going for 47 years, why wasn't that the campaign? Why weren't any of you saying this at the time? And then it's like, as the goalposts move, they will move with them too.
What?
I was debating.
Okay, why is Michael Leinhart now A-logging?
2 weeks ago. maybe 3 weeks ago now. And he says because of the pressure that
Why is
we're
Michael Einhart now
putting on
A-logging
Iran with our
Nick?
blockade
What the
of their
fuck?
blockade, he goes, I'll
Hey,
be
I'm definitely
surprised if
unmodding
this
your ass
regime
now.
makes
What
it
the
another
fuck?
month. And so then I said, in another month, when this regime is still standing, I will mention that to you, and you will move the goalposts and still support this war. So we got about a week until this is up, and there's just this thing where, like, you know, in the 12-day war, they would have said, see, no American casualties, no more than that. Then this one, we have American casualties. Yeah, but it's only been a few, like, and at a certain point, you're like, am I talking to the White House press secretary? Is that the job here? Is the job basically that the administration does something, you find out what that is,
What
you
the
go
fuck
out
is this,
and defend
Lionheart?
that. And if that contradicts everything you said last week, well, whatever, that's the job. The job is just to defend the administration. That's what it feels like when you're going and you're rattling off this list, which everyone does through every I remember in the first Trump term, I remember in the Obama administration, that you know, all the who are the, you know, the like young liberal guys who are like the you've debated,
like Harry
I think.
Sisson.
Yes, yeah, like Harry Sisson.
All
This
right.
is Harry Sisson. You know, it's like the
Saving this.
Inflation Reduction Act.
Blah,
Blah blah blah.
right,
This
right,
blah,
right,
blah,
right.
blah,
Send
like
this
just a
one into the
list
group
of
chat.
things that they did. You're like, hey, can we get into that list? Because all essentially what you have is what he passed a big giant spending bill, and then, oh wow, this is brand new. Oh, all-time stock market.
Hang on, let me
Oh, I
send
didn't
this one
realize.
in the
Dude, that's
patio real
crazy. I
quick.
haven't
Let me
heard
get
a
this-
president brag about having an all-time high stock market since Biden. And Trump the
Gotta send
first
this one
time,
into the
and
patio real
Obama,
quick. Sorry, hang on
and
one
Bush,
second.
and Clinton. Literally, yes, we live in an inflationary economy, motherfucker. The prices of things go up. Hey, guess what? The pricing of housing has never been higher, and the price of college has never been higher, and the price of daycare is, and yeah, stocks too. This means nothing.
Right.
And so there's something, I don't know, about just rattling off this list of what they've achieved when you're like, by your own, and this is one of the things that's frustrating about the Crowder debate, by your own admission, we're up against it with the Democrats coming in, right? By your own admission, we're losing the entire country if the Democrats come back in. Okay, launching this war just guaranteed that the Democrats come back in. You should be angrier about this than I am.
Right.
Or as angry.
Well, yeah, I mean, and to me, I always said this on my show. It feels to me like you have this relationship between the base of the party or the people in the country, and then there's the administration and the regime, you know, or the Republican leadership. And
Sorry,
I
I had
always
to get
felt
that-
like
I had to
during the
get to the group
election, I
chats
was
real quick, I'm
speaking
sorry.
towards the administration with the people behind me, saying, like in 2024, I said, I'm not going to vote for Trump unless he promises explicitly no war with Iran and we're going to get an immigration moratorium. And I felt like we were taking our own side as the voters, as the base, as the America First Republicans, and saying our vote is conditional. We have this set of demands. And it feels like these other influencers, like you say, like a Benny Johnson, a Steven Crowder, et cetera, they're facing us with their back to the party.
Yeah.
And everything the administration does, their job is to sell it to us so that we are prepared to go out and vote in the midterms, vote in the next cycle, whatever. And so it does just become like you are a regime apologist. That's actually your job. You don't even necessarily have an ideology. And what's more, I don't even really think you're on our side, because it's sort of like your job is to launder this to us. So, and it was like that with every issue. The Iran one, I mean, that was probably the biggest one, but it was on every single one, like you said. And when you would catch him on one thing, it was, well, what about this? What about that? What about, we talked about the border
No, we're not
wall.
taking any call-ins
I said,
right
well,
now.
the
We're
border
watching
wall
this,
was
so-
promised in 2016. It's still not built.
We got
I think
3
they
hours,
constructed
okay?
50 miles of new wall in the first administration. There's no progress on it really in the second administration. He goes, well, you know, it's more than the Democrats would have built. And you go, okay, but so is the goal for like Republicans to win, or is it for us to fix the country? Because
Right.
it feels like we're a little bit confused here. So, and I said this on the lead up to the interview or the debate. I said he's really caught up in the partisanship, Republican, Democrat, and that's the element of it. And I think
Totally.
you're on the money when you say it's like Harry Sisson.
Yeah.
It's like, that seems
It was
to
funny
be
when
your
Carter said Trump
kind
built
of
200
job.
feet of
And I'm
wall.
not on
I
the
know,
side of
that
the
was the
party. I
funniest
just want the
fucking thing
country to
ever,
get
dude.
better. So that's the miscommunication.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
It
I
was
really
so
like the way
fucking
you
funny,
put that,
dude.
standing with your back to the people versus your back to the party. It does feel that way. Well, also, I just, on some fundamental level, I go, if you're
He
if you're
built
doing
200
that,
feet.
Like, if you're that degree of
Okay,
a
we need
partisan,
2,000. All
what's
right,
the point
dog.
of you? Like, I
Right.
can listen to the White House press secretary. I can listen to Donald Trump. I don't need, like, if you're in this world, whatever this world of us is, where we're talking about politics on our show, what's the point of us? if you
Right.
don't have your own thought. You know what I mean? Like if you're just representing one of the parties, I already know what the official party line is.
Yeah.
I think, well, look, like for example, with the immigration example, right? So you
Michael
go,
Leinhart
okay,
fucked Amy.
so
Is
you're
he
going to
send
say
it on
Donald
live?
Trump
Michael
built
Leinhart does not have that
some
kind of
amount
motion.
wall
Come on.
in his first term. Okay. If we had elected
She only
Hillary
fucks
Clinton,
people that are useful to
we
her,
can all
okay?
agree we would have gotten zero amount of wall. Great. We got some wall with Donald Trump. Okay, in the following 4 years,
Michael Leinhart does not have that kind of
how many
motion.
tens of millions of people came? Oh, the answer is none of us know. None of
Right.
us actually even know. Some guess 10, 20. I've seen different projections. We don't even know how many illegals live in the country. But so, look, just take that example, right? So you fail to build the whole wall. What does that mean? That means you've failed entirely. And so what we, of course, should be looking for, if we recognize the Democrats as this existential threat, is what type of foundational permanent changes can be made that will not allow the next administration to just come in and undo all of it, which is a major glaring hole in the Trump administration right now. Because look, as we've talked about before, he was never really that good at wielding power. He
Right.
was very good at campaigning. He was always very good at campaigning and telling you how good he'd be at wielding power. But the problem is, right,
Yeah.
Donald Trump comes in, he wants to govern by executive order. He kind of likes governing by executive order. First of all, he's not splitting any of the credit. It's all him. He gets to sit down on day one and do this photo op where he signs all
Show
the...
me this guy's
What's
balls,
the problem
please.
with that, Nick?
Anonymous
Is
sent
that day one, I
$3
guarantee
glad
you,
have
day
learned in
one of
chat
the next
trying to
Democratic
speak truth to power, but
presidency
let's be
is
real,
going to
Nick
be them
wouldn't
doing the
suck
exact same
Destiny's
thing.
dick.
Doing the same thing where they sit down and they sign
Maybe,
500
but not
executive
Destiny.
orders nullifying
Oh,
every
brother.
last one of Donald Trump's executive
Oh,
orders.
brother.
So where's the win in that?
Right. Well,
Dude,
and that's
Nick's
exactly what happened
gay.
with Biden. And here's
Nick's
what's funny,
gay.
sort of structure of that
Oh,
argument
brother.
is he says, well, and Republicans in general,
It's,
they'll
it's
say,
like 8 years
so Biden
of this.
comes
Can
in,
you
he
guys
brings in 10,
please
20
get a
million
new
illegals.
bit, dog?
That's why Democrats are this existential threat. We have to vote Republican every time. And like you say, we elected Trump
Fuck
the first
you,
time to
dog.
build the wall. Why?
Oh,
because
brother.
a wall can
It's
never
just
be
so-
undone.
it's, like,
That was
boring.
sort
Can
of
we
the
get,
whole
like,
point,
just
is
new
it's this
material?
irreversible. There is no more illegal immigration. We've solved it, and it immunizes us
You know?
against a future
Can we just
Democrat
get new
administration.
material,
So
please?
the way the causal relationship
8
works
years of
is that
this.
your failure to build the wall directly created the illegal immigration crisis. And so then you have to say it's not just a matter of getting Republicans elected, but getting Republicans elected to do the right job. And then it gets back into we have an interest as the base and as the country that we're advocating for. Obviously, the party has their
I mean,
own
he did
interest,
say no to
which is
Amy
to be
Cooch.
elected.
That's the
and that means
straightest
they
thing
need to
any
balance
man's
these
ever done, to be
compromises between the
honest.
voters, the donors, their patronage network, and so on. And so
Here's
at
an
that
innocent
point, you
Vermont
say,
that's
okay,
crazy.
so
Yeah, you were
whose
AWOL
side
Nick,
really are
dude,
you
and
on?
you're banning people,
and there's this
so
other rhetorical
you're banning
trick they
people.
do,
You were,
which is you like to say,
I told you. I
I'm
told you
really
not to ban
disappointed
anybody.
with
You
Trump.
banned somebody.
He's either
and
not living up to his promises or straight up betraying us. It's not
You
even just
were
like they
AWOL
have
Nick,
setbacks
so
or they're
had to
incompetent,
take
bad
it
at
away.
governing, but in some
Sorry.
cases they're just not doing what they said they would do because they don't want to. Like with illegal immigration, why is
It's
Trump
really more than
reluctant
talking
to
shit
deport
about Nick
illegals
is what
from
I don't
farms,
like.
hospitality,
You know?
Wall Street, and big agriculture don't want him to? And I said that during the election, like it's not
I would
simply
find out
that
someone
the
who's making
Democrats
jokes
are
against
obstructing
Nick.
him.
Damn,
they're choosing
DNG
not to,
damn,
and they
G
know
just
they can
banned
get away
him.
with it because they're going to have these podcasters and influencers telling the voters, "Oh no, Trump is really
Dan G
trying.
coming
It's
in
the
hot."
Democrats and so on."
Hey,
and,
take out the trash, Dan G.
The
I
rhetorical
believe, you
trick
know,
that
it's
they will
fine.
use is if you're
Take
not
out the trash,
satisfied with
Dan G.
Republicans, they say, "Oh, but the Democrats are going to
Take
be
out
so
the
much worse."
trash.
And always the hyperbole.
love Dan
It's not
G.
just that the Democrats will be worse. They're going to make Puerto Rico and D.C. a state. They're going to pack the Supreme Court. They're going to bring in 100 million illegals. If Democrats
somebody-
get in,
somebody on
it's
banning.
over forever. And you
To
want
be
to
fair,
say, well,
he was just
it wasn't
repeating what
over
Lauren
forever under
said.
Biden.
Let's- yeah, blame
and
the
if it
e-girl.
was,
Blame the
why didn't they
e-girl.
fight to keep Trump in office in 2020? And if it's going to be over in
Yeah.
24,
Appealing
why
to
aren't they
e-girl
nuking
fallacy.
the filibuster to pass the SAVE
Yep.
Act? So somebody's lying here. Why is it that the voters are in this existential, like, nervous system cycle? It's all going to be over, but Republicans are like, yeah, Democrats
Michael
are going
Leinart
to win.
said it.
It's
I
going to
have
be
the
fine.
screenshots,
We
and that's
got
all
to
we
keep the
need.
filibuster.
Okay?
So,
And that's all
you know,
we
that's
need.
when you realize we're being lied to effectively.
Well, there's a parallel between the rhetoric the Democrats use about Donald Trump and then, you know, like I remember talking about this when Trump got shot in 24. And you see, like
dude, I'm
Obama
so
and Hillary
tired.
Clinton wish him a speedy recovery. And you're like, wait, Is he Hitler, or do you wish him a speedy recovery? Because, like, is it the end of democracy, or do we hope this guy recovers so that we can hold elections in a few months? Because, like, you really can't have both of those. Like, so you can't wish Hitler a speedy recovery. Well, all right, maybe on your show, but I'm not on. But on Hillary Clinton's show, you can't wish Hitler a speedy recovery. But right, so it's like a kind of similar thing to that. Now, again, I don't think either of us are trying to downplay the threat that is the Democrats. I mean, look, the Democratic establishment over the last 15 years really overstepped.
But you gotta respect.
They took it to a next level, even for
kidding,
like,
jokes.
Just the way they interfered in the presidential elections, framing Donald Trump for treason, like all of these things. But again, that's why it would be that much more important that, like, and this is a major one for
Dave
me.
Smith looks like Ross from Friends. Yeah, kind of. I mean, I guess they're both Jewish, right? So I guess it sort of makes sense.
Russiagate, it's you.
Right.
The one time Trump might stand up for someone is when it's him. That's the only time, right? He's not going to stand up for the J6ers. And I know they brag he got him out of jail 4 years later after letting him get tortured for years and condemning him at the time when he could have pardoned him right away. But, he would have had to take
number one, yeah.
Right. But it's you. Your own director of national intelligence.
I always get Dave Smith and Dave Rubin confused. Well, one of them bought a baby on the black market, and one didn't.
I mean, maybe treason isn't the right word, but
one of them bought a baby on the black market, and the other one's Dave Smith.
And no, we're not going after anyone for that. But the problem isn't just getting your own vengeance. It's that, like, but now you didn't destroy the apparatus that can do this to you or the next you in the future. I think that me and you are looking at this from a much more, like, zoomed out.
Yeah, Dave Smith is Jewish, yeah.
And even when you go, like, you're talking about immigration, you're like, okay, but zoom out. What's the major problem with immigration in the country? Okay, well, the major problem is essentially that the regime has essentially
there was like a little bit of friction between Nick and Dave for like a brief period of time, which was handled well.
The domestic population has flooded the country with third world
because Nick rightfully pointed out that the reason why Dave Smith is able to go on all these big platforms and talk about this issue is because he's Jewish. He was sort of like, he was like, look, Dave Smith's sort of like a token Jew, and it's like he's somehow becoming like the face of anti-Zionist, Israel critical content, and it's only because he is Jewish as he's allowed to do it.
This is his best issue. This is where he's done the best. The one thing that we'd all kind of have to give him credit for is, like, okay, the border is secure now. It was not at the past. Now it is secure. But that's the best you got. It's like you're driving off a cliff at 90 miles per hour, and he goes, I slowed you down to 85, but we're still headed toward this cliff. Then you don't get credit for solving the problem. And, what I was saying, Donald Trump likes to govern by executive order. I was saying not knowing how to wield power. You make a very important correction to that, which is in some cases it's actually wielding government power on behalf of, say, a foreign country or something like that, which has clearly been the priority from the beginning of this administration. But
yeah,
you go, look, dude, you came in your first time, you had Congress. You come in your second time, you have both houses of Congress and your own Supreme Court. He had so much political opportunity there to go, hey, listen, Congress, I'm demanding a one-page standalone bill that says this. And actually do something that is going to really change this, which is not that impossible to do. Right. But, you could, okay, look, he didn't have the juice to, like, get an amendment to the Constitution. What do you need, like 75% plus ratifying the states? Okay, you're not there. Although you could even make a really big show about an amendment to the Constitution, but some real amendment that just goes like, and even if it wasn't an amendment, it was a law. But like a law that goes, we're forcing every state prison to open their books to us and get every illegal that's in prisons out of the country. Like a slam dunk 80-20 issue with the American people. Like, there's creative ways to wield power, and he never even really tried. Is how it seems to me.
No, and it's like that on every single issue. It's like that with the tariffs, because on the tariffs, they specifically told them in the first administration, there's two ways you could do this. You can do these national security tariffs, and that'll take time because we have to do these studies about them. It'll take a couple of years, but they're going to be airtight. And they went with that in the first term, and those tariffs are still in place. Now, they had this discussion in the first term also. They said there's another way we could go about it. It's these emergency tariffs. Right. And you have so much more latitude. You could do them whenever you want, unilaterally. They said, but It's not going to hold up in court. And this was Bob Lighthizer, who was the trade representative in the first term. He said you should go with the first one. And they did, and it worked. Second term, had the same conversation. Trump said, I want the emergency tariffs because then I could use them not even so much for economic purposes, but for diplomatic purposes. I could use them to punish or reward countries for diplomacy and so on. Those tariffs, all of them were overturned by the Supreme Court. Comes back with Section 122. Okay, we could put a 10% tariff on everybody right now for 6 months while we work on these other ones. Got shut down by a committee of federal judges last week. And you say the right way to go about, and I know maybe you don't agree because you're a libertarian.
No, I don't agree with the tariffs, but I'm curious to hear your point.
But since, Trump is a protectionist and that's part of the agenda, the way to go about it would be a tariff schedule passed by Congress, which we haven't done in 100 years. And arguably, you could make the case because that's government revenue. That's hundreds of billions of dollars in perpetuity the government collects. And that would have been the way to do it. And it's the same thing with any of these different policies. You could do an executive order, cheap, easy. Trump can do it at a whim, or he can actually take the time, do it in the legislature, do it in a more comprehensive, systematic way, and it stands for, decades or a century or something. He always goes with the former. And this gets back to one, and you are right, Trump is incompetent. Like, he's terrible at governing. That is 100% true. But it also gets back to the original point, which is, who are we advocating on behalf of? Because for me, it's like, for us, for the people, we have to win. Or quality of life for us gets really bad. Like, we actually all have skin in the game. So we need Trump to succeed. I'm not out here rooting for him to fall because I'm just like mad. I'm rooting for him to succeed because if he doesn't, it's we that have to live among the third world immigrants. It's we that suffer because our purchasing power is destroyed, and we are going to die in the war potentially if there's a draft, or even if not, it's the gas prices. It's everything else. And so we want it to succeed, but obviously the politicians, if they had it their way, they would be, one, lazy, but two, make the compromises they need to get their golden parachute, take care of their donors.
Normally,
whatever.
I would
So it comes down to
listen to something like
politics.
this while I'm doing something else.
I'm on the
but now that
side
I'm
of the
streaming, I can't really do
people
anything
and our
else. So I'm
issues.
kind of stuck.
This whole other class, it really is. They're not on the same team as us.
Yeah.
You have to. We always talk about the Republicans are this we.
This would really hit with some World of Warcraft right now. You know what I mean?
It's them and us.
Well, that's right, and especially
game
when
I don't even know what I would play,
Donald
dude.
Trump is flat out saying MAGA is Mark Levin. Like, that's who it is.
Wow, I don't even
not
have
only
WoW
is it not
installed.
Nick
I'm not
Fuentes,
subscribed.
it's
I don't
not
even
even
have the
Tucker
latest
Carlson,
expansions.
not Candace Owens, not Alex Jones, not Megyn Kelly. We can't even compromise on Megyn Kelly. Like, I'd get on board if it was Megyn Kelly. A lot of times people will say this like, oh, Dave, you're just such a radical that you'll be upset unless you get everything I want. It's like, motherfucker, everything I want is not even on the table. It's not even in the realm of possibility. Like, do you really think, like, if Donald Trump, like, got the border secured, maybe just, like, slowed down on the money printing, like, we weren't devaluing our currency so fast and didn't start any wars and had a reasonable, like, I'd be sitting here going, like, but he didn't abolish the income tax. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we can't meet at Megyn Kelly.
Right.
I have to support Mark Levin. Well, no. Like,
There's a very small part of me that
we're
feels
not
like
in
picking up
any
WoW again, but I
ways
don't know
on
if I
the
can bring
same
myself
team.
to
We
do
are
that to my personal life.
I am much more on
I know.
Anna Kasparian's team than I am on
I'm
Mark
right
Levin's
there
team.
with you, dude.
So
I
sorry,
think I
this
just have to put it
blows
down
partisan
forever.
people's brains.
I think I just have to, like,
you see
clean
the video
cut.
they made that went
No more
viral
crack.
of you and Anna Kasparian, and it's like but it's so dumb, dude. They're trying to make, like, look, they have the exact same.
I'm gonna play some
points.
PS2.
And it's
I
like,
think.
no,
You guys cool with that?
What you found is
Let's
that
play some PS2
they
in the
say
background
the
here.
things that every critic of Israel says. Like, yeah, this is like kind of the basic.
I don't really want to
like,
play any more
like,
Spartan
here's
Warrior,
a
though.
point where he said they're committing genocide and she said they're committing
with
genocide.
that.
It's like, yeah, that. And they go, horseshoe theory proved, and you're like, okay, but like, there's a middle part of that horseshoe too.
Right.
Like, also
What do I wanna
Nancy
play?
Pelosi
Yeah,
and
it's
Donald
like a
Trump
casual.
and Mark Levin. And, you know what I mean? Like, they all say the same thing. You could do the same thing about them all saying we can't allow them to have nuclear weapons or whatever. Like, this just doesn't prove anything. And when it comes to this war in Iran, it seems to me that, like, if you're for it, there is no meaningful way that we are on the same team.
Right.
And so I think this is kind of
Maybe
why
a street. I've been feeling some NBA
responded
street
to
here
Andrew
lately.
Wilson with why don't we just debate the war? Because even though you might say you're against it, and I believe, I'm not saying he's not against it, I'm sure he is, but I think part of this also fundamentally comes down to what you think this war is. Like I heard Andrew Wilson describe it in his debate with Owen Schroyer, I believe it was. I think that's who he debated. And he goes, he's just killing pedophiles over there, man. They're all pedophiles anyway. And Andrew said to me, he goes, you just heard that clip. It's kind of taken out of context. And fair enough, maybe it is. But if you view the war that way, even if you're against it, you certainly wouldn't have the same feelings that, say, I have. You know, one of the things I was thinking about, I'll give this away if we do debate, that I would have asked Crowder, or I would ask Andrew Wilson, is like, are there any things a president could do that just on moral grounds alone, you'd go, I can't support this anymore? So, like, let's just say hypothetically, let's say Donald Trump, all other things being equal, he ordered 20,000 abortions. I don't even mean voluntary abortions. I mean involuntary. I mean, all abortions are involuntary in some sense, but the mother didn't even want them. And he just ordered 20,000 abortions. I think you'd all concede, okay, we can't support him after that. And no more of this, like, oh, the Democrats are worse. It's like just on basic moral grounds, you can't support. So, okay, that's kind of how I view this. Like, I don't think I'm against abortion because it's murder. I'm also against killing 168 little schoolgirls because it's murder. So there's that element of it.
Right.
There's also the element that it's fucking treason, dude. Like it's okay, it's not literal treason. Obama having Jolani at the White House and giving foreign aid to Syria is literally treason. That is literally treason. By the way, you know, they love bringing up that Iran killed our Marines, which is not exactly true. It was like groups in Lebanon who were friendly with Iran killed our Marines. Iran built all the roadside bombs that killed our boys. And also not exactly true. If you look into them, they were produced in Iraq. Now they were used by some Shiite groups that were linked to, that are like friendly with Iran, although we were partners with the closest, to Iran. I know you know this stuff. But, there was also a Sunni insurgency that we were dealing with for the most part. Jolani brags about how he was a member, how he was killing our boys in Iraq, that he was in Fallujah doing the fighting. He was a member of the insurgency. Trump has him at the White House.
Right.
Not a peep out of all of these guys who are so mad about this stuff. So there's that like kind of treasonous element. You launched a war of aggression and slaughtered people on behalf of a foreign country. Like it's not just the practical. I think there's also just like a moral argument that like we can't be a part of that. We can't excuse that away.
Yeah,
that's how I feel.
For me, it's less about morality, only because, and I know probably your audience is gonna not love this, but I think that when a president engages in a war, these are things that do happen. It's horrible, it's tragic, but there is some truth to the fact that if we're going to conduct any foreign policy, it probably will involve military kinetic action. If that happens, then people will die. That's what happens in a war. For me, the question is more about, and to the larger point, who is the war for? And I think that it's not even so much about the morality of people dying in the war, whether they're civilian casualties or military casualties. It's the whole premise of MAGA and America First is America First. And that is what animated the whole movement at 16. It was in contradistinction to Jeb Bush and the Bush dynasty and the legacy of Iraq. And to me, those are just the fundamental pillars. And, not to keep going back to it, but Crowder said to me, it's a purity test. He said, what could a president do to win your vote? I'm like, keep the promises they made. They said no new wars. Here's your new war. They said mass deportations. We're not getting them. That's not a big ask. And what's more, let's be honest, the war in Iran is not like some isolated event. People are trying to analyze and they say, well, it's about energy dominance with China. Venezuela and Iran are part of this. We're boxing China in so they don't get their oil. And, without even getting too much into that, it's complete context denial, which is that we've been conducting a foreign policy for 30 years where we've systematically went into Iraq, Syria, Libya, Iran, all these countries to decimate them. And it actually doesn't fit a very clear through line or a narrative for American interest. You had all these different arguments. It's about spreading democracy. It's about chemical weapons. It's about nuclear weapons. The clear through line is these are all adversaries of Israel. this is part of their plan to terraform the Middle East in such a way where they have no rivals. And this is, by the way, what they wanted and that no other president gave them. They wanted it under Bush, Obama, Trump. They tried to get it even under Biden when they provoked Iran a couple of times in 2024. And Trump finally gave them, the ideological neocons and Israel, what they've been wanting basically for 50 years, ever since the Islamic Revolution. And so you say, like, not only did you not deliver America first, but you repudiated America first with your allegiance to the biggest threat to it. And all these people are acting like, oh, well, you know, so what? It's not a big deal. It's only 2 weeks. It's only 30 days. It's only 15 casualties. And you say that's ignoring the bigger picture. He changed sides, like he's with the enemy, giving them everything they ever wanted.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, dude. I mean, all of the never Trumpers, you know, I saw someone was posting today that National Review Never Trump, you know,
I'm the
issue.
goat, dude. I'm the goat.
All these guys, Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, and all the guys who are championing this move with Donald Trump, they were all the people who said they would never vote for Donald Trump for moral reasons and all this stuff. And yeah, dude, it is pretty hard to ignore that this is the continuation of the clean break strategy. We're just watching it. I mean, they all said it in their own words for so many decades. You could just go back and read what they wrote. And we're to believe that this is like coincidentally the 7th country on Wesley Clark's list. It happens to be, and coincidentally, it's the entire Israel lobby that pushed him into it. I will say it's been, I mean, look, maybe this is a major theme anytime I feel like talking to you. But it is crazy how much the Overton window has moved on this. Where now, I don't know if you saw this, but both John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, those are two, there were a few others, but I mean, these are two, the Democratic secretaries of state and presidential nominees who came out and just said exactly what you said. They go, Netanyahu was always trying to get all of us to do that. Like, this is this is just open now. It's just like, this is the obvious thing. It's like, well, yeah, we all know Netanyahu's trying to get us into these wars, but you don't do it. You give him some. You don't give him all of them, you know? And then we're to look back at Obama as if he stood up to the Israel lobby or something like that. It's like he gave him Libya and Syria. So like he didn't really stand. But yes, even he did say, we won't do this one. Even George W. Bush stood up to Dick Cheney and the neocons on this one. And it was because of the military realities of going after Iran.
Get blocked,
It's been interesting to watch. I know, like I've seen some of your coverage of this, and I think both of us, we're trying to be fair about this. We were both kind of going, after the 6-day war, I certainly was questioning. Because, well, frankly, there were some people who I admire very much who did get a little out over their skis. I think Tucker and Jeffrey Sachs and Mearsheimer probably all said variations of like, if you attack their nuclear sites, they will shut down the strait and they will hit our bases. And that turned out not to be true. You look at that and you go, huh, maybe they will just roll over. Maybe they will just capitulate. I mean, I don't think so, but I'd still warn against this war because look of all these potential catastrophic outcomes. And then we launch this one and it's like, oh yeah, we're here now. This is what everyone was warning against. And I don't know where you see this going, but I think, you know, I'm not saying like Professor Pape is right and it's guaranteed that we're in the escalation trap. I hope Donald Trump just walks away at some point. It does seem, though, at least right now, we're at this very dangerous position where the absolute best thing Donald Trump could do is just stop it and come home. And the problem is that there's just, that's it. And that's the end of his presidency, man. I mean, there's just no say. And so, like, I saw Joe Kent, you know, he comes on and he goes, you know, Mr. President he's the only one strong enough to leave and save his presidency and say it was a win and all this. And I'm like, man, I hope he's listening to him. Like, that's who you should listen to. This guy who looks like a He-Man doll and is your sir, yes, sir. And okay. But if me and you were just speaking honestly, that's admitting total defeat. His approval rating will be in the 20s. In the next couple months. If after this, that's all he has to show for it, is that Iran is transformed into a global power who now has this ace in the hole. They can close the strait anytime they want. That's a disaster. And Donald Trump, and that's still his best option. And so, but he has not even begun to accept that that's his best option and that he's going to lose like this. So again, I think this week he's going to escalate again. then what's Iran's response to that going to be? So essentially, the best case scenario is that Donald Trump's presidency is ruined. That's how I view it.
Dunking on these motherfuckers.
Curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I
crazy.
do
I'm
think that we're
slaying
sort of
this
trapped.
game right
That's
now.
really always been the whole conceit, is that Israel, we talk about it, people think we're using these terms loosely. I use them very precisely. They're dragging us into the war, and that means it's this step-by-step process where each individual step, it becomes more unlikely that we're able to extricate ourselves from it. That's sort of the whole point. Is like it's sort of slowly and then all at once you're in this conflict.
Wins.
Nobody from the very beginning would say we're going to go into a ground war and fight 90 million people in this huge country.
NBA Street's so
but
good,
it starts with the industrial sabotage, the cyber attacks,
Been doing all the things lately.
nuclear
Shadowheart's coming to this
assassinations.
best PS2
We're
RPG.
gonna
I've
shoot
never played
down their
that one.
missiles, engage the proxies. And this is how it's
expensive
gone
as
step by
fuck,
step over
dude.
2 years until now. The 12-day war became this 60, 75-day war, whatever we're in. And I think that the way it's shaking out, if you want to get into the details, is there's two sticking points still. And that is the first one, which has been the one from the very beginning, which is enrichment. And the United States says you cannot have enrichment, not at a low level. There can never be a sunset clause. There needs to be a permanent moratorium and no enrichment at all. And why does Trump in particular have to insist upon this? Because he tore up the JCPOA. And what was the problem with the JCPOA? It sunsetted. It allowed them to enrich at low levels, and then after 10 years, it went away. So if Trump were to get anything less than zero enrichment, then he looks like an idiot. He looks like he got a worse deal or a deal just as good after we decimated them. So you go, it's been 10 years of maximum pressure, and we came crawling back to beg for the same deal back.
Which is a little bit better.
It's a
got more features
non-starter.
and
So
stuff, surprisingly,
conversely,
same game.
Iran says our right to enrich is as sacred as the sovereignty over our soil. They equate enrichment with sovereignty for obvious reasons because it's their only deterrent against Israel and Washington engaging in this regime change, which is existential for the regime. So there's no wiggle room for either side. There's no coming down from those. And then the second one since the war is the Strait. And the United States cannot accept that Iran gains the Strait. Again, after we hit them with everything, now they have this strategic choke point. They have 5 times more oil under their control than before the war. And then Iran, likewise, they can't give up the Strait. Why would they? They can close it. We can't take it back. And that is their deterrent against a future conflict, because that is how they impose a cost, not only on us, but the whole world, if we were to try to. And the two issues are related, because if we don't get the centrifuges in this go around, Iran knows we're coming back for round 3 to mow the grass, trim the grass. We're going to come back in, bomb the stockpile, the centrifuges, whatever. How do they prevent another U.S.-Israel crack at it? We got to have the Strait under our control so that everybody knows we go back in, it's $7 gas. It's a global meltdown. The UAE, Bahrain, Saudi, they're done. They're finished after that. So those two issues are going to be the impasse. I don't see budging on either of them. It's just irreconcilable, intractable differences. And so I think you're totally right. At least in the short term, there's going to be a return to fighting. And then on a longer timeline, look, the thing that people never keep in mind, unlike the U.S. and North Korea or the U.S. and Venezuela or Cuba, they don't have a country like Israel sabotaging diplomacy and provoking through deception and lobbying for escalation. So even if you get someone like Trump that says, all right, we're just going to call it, I'm going to take the hit. Well, is there someone you forgot to ask? We need permission, actually, and they're always going to sabotage it. So I think you're right. I don't know that it's a certainty, but there's very few options where this works out for us.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think I agree. It's not a certainty. And kind of the thing that makes it not a certainty is that Donald Trump himself is such a wild card. And you could see him just spinning it as how great it was, but I don't think anyone will believe him. But I think you're right about that. Particularly, the political incentives for Donald Trump are so bad, and then the survival incentives for Iran. And you could really watch from the 12-day war to this war how much that you flipped the incentive structure. And it's in the sense that if someone comes to my house with a gun and they pull a gun on me and they go, they're like, give me, and I'm like, okay, hey, just calm down. What do you want? I'll give you my money, blah, blah. And then they go, no, I'm here for your kids. He goes, well, that just flipped the incentive, right? Like the
Right.
first time my incentive was, let me give you my money so that nobody gets hurt. But like, if you're here for my kids, then I have to make a move. And yeah, I might get shot in the process, but it doesn't matter. And it's like, it's kind of been that.
I'm the goat.
Like,
I'm the
in
goat.
a way, we're there for their kids now. There's a parallel to us killing so many of their kids. But I agree with you. I think that there's a real question right now, and I worry about it because I've seen the hubris of leadership in DC is really, it's unbelievable. And it's unbelievable how many of these people, because they have so much power, convince themselves that they're such geniuses and can figure all of this out. But even the damage that this war has done so far, we don't really know. You know, like the Strait of Hormuz, I know you read the news just like I do. Since the blockade of the blockade, it's only slowed down the number of ships going through, like total number of ships. We've now been like 2 months of where 20% of the world's oil and a huge percent of the world's fertilizer have been completely shut down.
Jordan, baby.
We probably won't exactly find out how much that impacts the global economy for another month or two, but it already might be really bad. But then the fact that, like, as you mentioned, gas prices here are already up. And it must be something for someone like you, who was a hardcore Trump supporter in 2016. And not just a hardcore Trump supporter, but you were it was like your coming of age kind of time. Like, right. I was 18 when 9/11 happened. You were, I think, 18 in 2016. So like right around, like that's like the big thing that's going on as you're becoming a man. And to watch some of the quotes that he's had where they ask him about the pressure it's putting on the American economy, and Trump just straight up goes like, I wasn't thinking about that. I'm thinking about this war. I'm thinking they can't have nuclear weapons. I don't care about. And you're like, dude, man, if that wasn't an ad for the Democrats, I don't know. I mean, you guys could just run that and win the House easy on this. It's pretty wild to say.
Yeah, seriously. And, in fairness, I think, it's a horrible, stinking quote. You do have to consider it, though, from his perspective that obviously it's a game of chicken. And it's a question of who's going to blink first. And Iran is betting on the fact that they have more leverage over us, more pressure, because it's a midterm election year. Right, gas prices, inflation is going to hurt Republicans. Excuse me. And so I think Trump almost has to telegraph, like, I'm irrational.
There's a lot of controversy.
I don't care. I'm erratic. Yeah. You don't have... So I can be sympathetic to that angle, but obviously it's not good politics to say... they ask him, they say, did you think about the financial prosperity of Americans? No, I didn't think about their financial security at all. I only care about whether Iran's nuclear. So it's a terrible thing. But, with that being said, as far as the damage is concerned, people don't realize it's over after this. I really believe that I saw on the news today, they said it could be in the New York Times in the hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe even the trillions of dollars. And the reason being, especially in America, I talked about this on my show, the only thing that is driving economic growth right now is the AI boom.
The game breaker.
It is the purchasing of chips. It is the construction of these data centers. That is most of it. We're not even doing so much commercial real estate, the conventional stuff. It's all the data centers. And since this war started, I think the number was 50% of all planned and in-progress data centers have been paused. Mm-hmm. And that is all the real estate boom in the country. That's all the construction. That's all the development. And the reason being is because all the AI runs on electricity. That's what makes it economical, is that you have cheap and plentiful energy. And so if you have a huge energy shock, which we haven't even fully felt the effects of, that's something that lags behind because, the oil goes out of the strait and then it takes time. I think the last shipment of Persian Gulf oil arrived in Europe and Asia 4 weeks ago. So there's this month-long delay.
Dude,
then there's rationing. Then let's say the Strait of Hormuz opens. How many ships go through? There's a lot of ships stuck in the Persian Gulf, and they're not all going to go out at once. It's going to take time even for those to get out, and then, for all the supply chains to recalibrate.
There it is.
So it hasn't even hit yet. And then once it does, like you said, there's going to be this ripple effect. It's not just the oil, it's the fertilizer. And then the energy and oil also affects groceries because it all goes on a truck. It all goes on, transportation. So there's going to then be a following economic correction or a trailing economic correction that follows the energy shock. And then that's just game over. And to me, it's less so that he said the financial security, whatever, because it's like, you kind of understand why he says that.
Harder.
To me, he said at the exact same time that this was all playing out in February. In January and February, they were telling the hardcore Republican base, we're done with mass deportations. We're not saying it anymore. We're not doing it. The surge in Minneapolis is over. They said we're only now going after criminal illegal aliens. And moreover, they got a new DHS secretary. They got Christine Nome out, and they said the new policy is we're not doing patrols. We're not going to go in people's houses. We're not doing these big operations in the cities. We surge, 5,000 CBP and ICE. And they said the reason is too unpopular for the midterms. Way too unpopular. We're going to kill with Latinos. It's like, okay, so then you started the most unpopular war in modern history, which causes inflation and high gas prices. Isn't that what got Biden and Kamala to lose 2 years ago? So you say, I see what you're doing for them.
Yeah.
Why can't you do that for us? SAVE Act, can't do it. Mass deportations, can't do it. All these things that the voters are told
can't do shit.
Politically impossible. You got to be practical. Think about the political realities of the Democrats. Oh, war with Iran? We need a $1.5 trillion military budget, and we're going to kill the supreme leader, and we're going to get $6 gas. It doesn't even matter. And that's when you realize
this guy can't do
shit.
It
is still the uni party. That's kind of the conceit is like MAGA's dead. Whatever Trump was doing in 2016 is over. That like outsider challenge, it's not the same. He's part of the establishment. So to me, that's like the big picture when you really realize how it all works.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an undeniably great point.
Chud the Builder would be seething.
You're like, look,
be playing
mass deportations would have been very messy, very unpopular, and in fact, some people might die, some people might get hurt. It's like, yeah, all of that is true about the war in Iran times 10, and it wasn't even your promise. Right. It was you promised the opposite. Yeah. So how about keep a promise that's unpopular instead of, personally, I actually think there's a way that like deportations could have been done that would have remained popular. Because in fact, when Donald Trump came in 2024, for the first time in my life, super majorities of the American people supported mass deportations. Now, I remember talking about this on the show a lot, and I was like, look, that is true, but it's also a number on a poll, and if they get messy, that number will go down, and so you got to kind of like, you got to factor all of that into it. But, I mean, I guess that's part of the reason why I'm so upset about this, too. And why it gets frustrating when people are arguing, but you can't support the Democrats because they're so awful. And you're like, yeah, I know. That's the whole point, man. The whole point is that you had this opportunity in 2024, like a huge opportunity in 2016, but then in 2024, in some ways, a much bigger opportunity because, well, frankly, of Joe Biden. And the Joe Biden years really pushed the country to the right on social issues, on immigration issues. I mean, people kind of forget this. I think we talked about this last time you were here. But like in my entire life, I'm 43. The only time the culture's ever moved to the right was under Joe Biden.
Yeah.
It has never happened, including under Trump's. Under Trump's first term, the culture moved far to the left from where it had been. We became the Pussy Hat March and, safe space country and all this shit. And it wasn't until Joe Biden that actually, as a reaction against him. But so then Donald Trump comes in, wins all the swing states, wins the popular vote for the first time. The Democrats have like a 22% approval rating. They're just defeated. This was a time when you could have done some awesome shit for the country and really ridden that wave. And look, as you said, this is not, it's like the things, Donald Trump has out loud said things that should only be said on your show. You know what I'm saying? Like Donald Trump goes, the Adelsons give me hundreds of millions of dollars and they love Israel more than they love America. And they come in every day and want me to do things for Israel. And I always do it. Like, I thought that's supposed to be an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory here. Dude, like where, and to your point, it's honestly like just demonstrably true that at every level, they're very good. Like the lobby is very good at getting, because if you remember, you made the point about no nuclear enrichment at all. But Donald Trump, in the negotiations before the 12-day war, when he attacked him in the middle of or Israel attacked him in the middle of negotiations, who knows exactly what happened there.
Just two rows.
He had made a couple comments about how like, no, I'm not demanding no enrichment whatsoever. And then all of the like Mark Levin, they're very good at this. They get on him and they go, well, Mr. President, if you're really tough and you are so tough, then you'll demand no enrichment. And that's, you could see where Trump's like susceptible to that and go, yeah, that is more badass, you know, that is, but that's the poison pill, man. It's like that little one thing just got 2 wars out of it. Because even though it seems like a subtle distinction, it's like, no, that's the biggest distinction in the world, because you're telling them they can't have a legal civilian nuclear program. And then, of course, as you mentioned, that's their deterrent that they're relying on. So yeah, I completely agree with you with that. Hey guys, let's take a moment to thank our sponsor for today's show. And this sponsor is very near and dear to my heart. It is Healthy Hibernation, which is the children's book written by my beautiful wife, Lauren Smith. It's a really sweet book.
Sponsored by
very
his wife,
wholesome and light and fun for the kids. And it's just got like a positive message about eating healthy, which is one of the challenges for parents today, to navigate a world where your supermarket is filled with poison in brightly colored boxes that your kids all want to eat. And so the idea of this is a book for little ones to kind of start a conversation about eating healthy. It is available at Amazon. We've been blown away by the response so far, so thank you guys so much. If you have children or you have anyone in your life who has children, please pick up a copy of Healthy Hibernation by Lauren Smith over at Amazon.com. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Prolon. A lot of you have probably heard about these fasting
2 sponsors
diets.
back to
That's a big
back
thing these days. People are doing these diets where they give up food altogether for long periods of time, and there's a lot of benefits in them. The problem is that you have to give up food, which is something I certainly wouldn't be willing to do. But now Prolon has solved this problem. Prolon is a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while tricking cells into thinking that they're fasting. So they basically keep your body in a fasting state, but you don't actually have to give up food. And this all starts with Prolon's 5-day program. Soups, snacks, and beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state. So you get all the benefits of a fasting diet without having to give up food. That's the idea. To learn more, go to prolonlife.com/POTP. That way you can get 15% off the 5-day nutrition program. So that's prolonlife.com/POTP for 15% off your 5-day nutrition program. Highly recommend you check it out, guys. All right, let's get back into the show. Now, as far as your point about, well, this is part of negotiating in a war, I get your point. I get where he does have to seem like a madman. I guess the problem is not so much just that he said it. The problem is that he actually did it. Like, the problem is that he actually did sacrifice the economic well-being of Americans for Israel. And not, look, I mean, as you know, the WMD thing is as much bullshit with Iran as it was with Iraq. This was never over their nuclear threat, and they wanted to overthrow them before they were even before they even had a nuclear program. This is always just the thing that they know will sell with the American people. They've done focus group testing on this. I think it was Frank Luntz. It was like back in the 90s when they were focus group testing on, Scott Horton taught me about this. He had a great note on this. But so they were doing these focus groups about the war in Iraq, and they were like, hey, how do you feel about us fighting this war to liberate the people of Kuwait? And Americans are like, what? And then they go, what about a nuclear threat? And everyone's like, all right, well, that is something we have to go take care of.
Fucking eat shit.
We all know what this is about. And it's not even about Iran.
It is.
It's about Lebanon.
Beardson
and it's about Iran supporting Hezbollah, and Israel wants to take southern Lebanon. Very coincidentally, they've been taking southern Lebanon during this war, you know? And it's like,
transformative content. We are transforming this content. Absolutely.
I'm against it.
We're playing to be a street.
But however you feel about that,
okay,
like you said, it is it's treasonous in spirit to say, in order to help them achieve this goal, we are going to sacrifice our people. And what could be more the antithesis of the fundamental Trump promise, which was that, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to sacrifice America on behalf of the world or some global ambition, because that doesn't really matter to us.
Right. Well, and, you know, I think the original appeal of Trump is this idea that he was going to do the things that were unpopular, but that were necessary for the country. You know, and he would always say that. Even 40 years ago, there was a famous interview, I think it was in the 70s, where he said, you know, I don't know that I would ever run for president because, you know, the things that you need to do would be unpopular, and you can't always be the popular guy, and so on and so forth. And it's like, you know, getting back to the generational coalition in 2024 that won this election, I remember the exuberance when we won in 24, when Trump won in 24. They were calling it a golden age. It was RFK Jr., Elon Musk. You had all this political capital to fix a lot of things that would have been unpopular to do, like Doge, cutting the deficit and cutting the debt. mass deportations, building the wall, all those things they promised to do, and they squandered that political capital, the $7 gas, the inflation, unpopular, on the war. And you think about what if in an alternate timeline, they took the $200 billion from the big, beautiful bill for DHS, and they actually did mass deportations and followed through. Trump's approval rating would go down. People would die. It would get ugly. But the right wing would rally behind him. They would say, because we're fighting for America. They would say, this is existential. Getting these illegal aliens out, it is, on some level, about taking control back from the Democrats. It is about taking control back from foreigners, putting Americans first. And so you'd say, we feel good about this. We feel good about the conflict. It's ugly. There's going to be a cost. There would have been inflation. The Wall Street Journal was always warning about that, saying you deport all these illegal aliens, labor cost goes up, demand goes down, you're going to get some inflation. But people would have been on board because of what it is. Same thing with the indictments, like you mentioned earlier about Obama with Tulsi Gabbard in June last year, or the Clintons for that matter, or any of them. People really would have been there for it, but they squandered all those things in pursuit of another country's priorities and foreign policy or even domestic policy. And there's one thing that stood out to me when this conversation was happening. When we launched this war in Iran, all the Trump supporters had to defend it. This cadre of influencers. And I remember there was one line they kept using. They kept saying, I can't believe we squandered this generational coalition. The generational coalition was supposed to be about immigration and all this other stuff. And you almost want to grab these people by the head, by their ears, and shake them and say, they don't care about those issues. Yeah. They're not squandering it. They're spending it. This is what it was for. In the mind of like,
Street, I'm not gonna lie.
And I know you're a libertarian, so I think, we can kind of see it for what it is. There are a lot of these heritage Americans, white nationalists, immigration restrictionists, and in their mind, they're on the team. The Twitter posters are in the White House, and Trump is looking out for them so they don't encounter diversity that makes them uncomfortable in their neighborhood. And so this whole thing was about, getting those illegals out and making America a Norman Rockwell painting. And you want to say, no, you were the mark. The generational coalition was banking, Tim Mellon, Tech, Elon Musk, Andreessen Horowitz. It was the donor class, which was 60% of the donations for Trump in 24, inverse from 16, to get a 10% corporate tax cut, a war in Iran, annexation of the West Bank, southern Lebanon, Gaza, moratorium on AI regulation, bring Palantir and Little Tech and PayPal Mafia into the White House and get them all these contracts.
I'm sorry.
That was actually the purpose of the generational coalition. And then, you're sour grapes and going home. They don't care. They got what they wanted from you. You voted it into office. Now they confer all the privileges on the donors. This idea that it was, hey, get your pitchforks and torches. We're taking the country back. That was a scam to get you to vote for this interest-based agenda. So that's the part where, to me, it's like you just don't understand what politics is.
Yeah. No,
hear this every night.
Listen, as a libertarian, that's exactly right. It's just that you don't understand the nature of this game, and you've got this conception of you're on a team or this, and none of this is real. And look, I do. Look, man, I mean, I understand people out of desperation,
so
people wanting to believe in something. It's much,
that's the problem.
What we're asking people to swallow is much grimmer than what Steven Crowder is asking them to swallow. And so there's a part where I understand people not wanting that to be the case. I probably was to some degree guilty of this, although I was always very guarded because I knew, the Trump track record. But it was like, hey, look, they actually did try to throw him in jail this time. They actually really did maybe even tried to assassinate, who knows exactly. And he's coming in and, hey, he's putting Tulsi Gabbard at DNI now. And like, hey, his son is tweeting at me that we're going to keep all the neocons out. You're like, all right, let's go. But this is almost what's frustrating with some of those guys. Like, hey, I'm down to be on the team. You just got to give me something, like something that's a reasonable, there's something in it for us. But man, when you think back, as you're saying this, it reminds me, which I think a lot of people forget this, but one of the huge appeals of Donald Trump, I mean, really, this was up there with one of the things that he said that people loved in 2016, was that he basically made the argument that because he's rich, he's uniquely in this position where I don't need any of these donor monies. Now, this was one of the first broken promises of Trump's, and everyone just kind of let it go because, again, I think people were kind of desperate. They had never had anything like Donald Trump before, and it's very easy to start making excuses to yourself. Yeah, whatever, he'll take some money, but he's still fucking Trump. He's still pissing off CNN. Yeah, I know he lies all the time, but like whatever. He lies about little stuff, you know, whatever the kind of coping mechanisms are. But he used to openly say, like, Marco Rubio, he used to say Sheldon Adelson wants to make Marco Rubio his puppet. I don't need his money. I won't be that guy. And it is kind of amazing to go, he just went from being that to just being like, that's the whole thing. Like, essentially the whole operation is like an Adelson op. And he openly admits it. And do you remember in 2016, when he said the thing, and I don't even know how like red-pilled you were yet at this point, but he had said, there was one point where Donald Trump had said, just like off the top of his head, as he typically would do in an interview, where they asked him where he stood on Israel-Palestine. And you remember back in 2016, this was one of the most fun parts about Trump's run in 2016, is that a lot of times they would ask Donald Trump a question, and he would kind of go like, and you could tell that in that moment he was figuring out what his policy was on this issue. Like it was like remember when Chris Matthews goes like, so you're pro-life, and he's like, I'd have to say I'm the most pro-life there is. And he goes, so should a woman go to jail for murder if she aborts? So and he goes, I'd say yeah, you know, and like that's not even the position of pro-lifers in America. Right. You know what I mean? Which is like an interesting thing we could get into, but like that's actually not most pro-lifers, but that's a very, very fringe view, even amongst pro-life. But he doesn't know. He's just so they ask him about Israel-Palestine, and in his typical Trump way, he's just going on instinct and saying what he thinks. So he just goes, I'd say we should be neutral. We should be neutral, and we should stay out of it. We should be friends with that. But saying you should be neutral to the Israel lobby is like saying we should eat Jewish babies. Like there's literally no, you saying we should be Adolf Hitler if you say we should be neutral in the Israel-Palestine. And then he got a lot of heat for it. And then you remember he went to AIPAC?
Yep.
And he gave this speech. This is when I started taking him very seriously politically. Because I was like, it's one thing to be able to move a lot of people in Alabama, or it's one thing to be able to talk to red state America, working class people. It is a different thing to be able to get a standing ovation from the Israel lobby. You know, that's like, that means a lot in Washington, D.C. And so he goes there, and how does he win them over? Well, he's Donald Trump. So first he goes, Obama makes very stupid deals. I believe in smart deals. And the worst deal ever made was the JCPOA, the Iran deal. I don't even know if he knew JCPOA, but he said the Iran deal. And they're standing ovation for that. So anyway, just reminding people that originally, at least openly, Donald Trump's instinct was to be neutral and not be involved. That got the Israel lobby to attack him. And to get them off his back, he promised them he would tear up the JCPOA.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy that, and here we find ourselves all these years later in the war that was prevented by that agreement.
Well, you're right. And those are two things that I bring up on my show that people forget, because people say like, oh, well, Trump has always been pro-Israel. That's always kind of been part of the deal. And it's like, no, it really wasn't. I mean, in 2015, early 2016, you're right. I remember that interview well. And he said, we're going to be neutral. We're going to treat both sides fairly. And he went, I don't know if it was AIPAC or RJC, but he, like you said, he said that thing about Rubio, I think in December 15, where he said, oh, well, he's going to take your money. He's your puppet. I'm not going to take your money. And I even said this in 24. And at the time, I know a lot of people didn't take it seriously because it didn't sound like real or like concrete. I was saying like, he's going to bring us to war in Iran. He's not going to do the deportations. But I also said that the prospect is different, like, or rather the proposition of Trumpism is different because, like you said, and this is the most important thing, when you go back to 16, Trump said, I'm rich, I'm a billionaire, I'll self-fund my campaign. That is why I can fix America. Like, there's a very clear
hey, what do you mean? I'm transforming the
chain
content.
Where he says,
my tummy
the
hurts,
system is
dude.
broken. The politicians are all
I had to
talk,
charge my
no
headphones and
action.
my tummy
They
hurts,
never
bro.
deliver
Like,
real victories. Why? Because they are controlled by the donors.
be a little. How about show a little sympathy
alone
for a
can
guy with
fix
a
it because I'm so
fucking
rich.
upset
I'll
tummy,
self-fund my
okay?
campaign. I will run the government like
How
a
about that?
business. I'll hire and fire at will. And that's why I can bypass all of the gridlock, all these problems that have prevented real change.
I have a little sympathy for the beard
and that
dog.
was another big aspect of it. Is
for
he
having
would say,
an upset belly.
It's not just going to be these like political wins. He said, no, we're going to deliver a real.
My belly hurts,
said,
and this is how you're
going to take this country and make it.
You know, I deserve
again.
some super chats,
and
honestly.
What
For
you're getting
this
at
Power
16
Chat Live /
is totally different than from 24, where they're like,
I deserve some subs.
You go
here.
to these people and say, well, he said staple green cards to diplomas. He said we're going to bomb Iran, basically. He said there's really no plan to do mass deportations. And people would say, you know, once you get past all that golden age stuff, they say, yeah, well, it's going to be better than a Democrat. And you go, okay, but like lesser two evils, better than a Democrat? Wasn't the whole point that he was going to like break the system? I'll never forget that debate. I don't know if it was the South Carolina debate or maybe the one before that, but there's that viral clip where he goes,
thank you, Lingo. I appreciate that. Finally,
we
somebody
needed
shows me a
tickets
little
for the
sympathy,
television audience. You can't get them.
Finally,
you want to know who's in the audience? Donors, special interest. And people, if you watch that clip now, everyone in the comments says, "Oh, now I get why he got elected."
That's so real.
Now I get.
That's so
I'm
real.
left wing. I'm Democrat. Now I see it, and it's like,
in the woods, dude.
Yeah, that's what created the cult of personality. That's what created diehard Trump supporters. And it's like Tucker points this out. It's like Animal Farm. It's like the revolution has betrayed itself. Now he's just like the others.
Thank God.
And that's where you say, this is now dead. This wave has crested. It's not dynamic anymore. Now we need to look for the next wave because this will only disappoint us in the future. So that's a very good point about the self-funding. And you're right. Almost nobody talks about it.
Yeah, it just kind of went away. But look, I mean, I think that was also, I guess, kind of part of the disconnect of where me and you are on this versus where like Crowder is on this, where it's like, look, it's very easy, especially for guys like us. It's very easy to have your own narcissism, you know, fuck with you, because it's just the world. There's a camera in front of us. We're on. You get a lot of people watching your thing, and you can feel like you're an important person. But like at the end of the day, the truth is that me and you aren't really going to determine anything that happens here. You'd be like, oh, you guys cost us the midterm. No, the Trump administration cost us the midterm. There's nothing I could say that would change the reality on the ground. You know, like this is what it is. But I think in some way, people also don't understand how uniquely positioned Donald Trump was. Like, there are so many factors, so many stars that aligned for Donald Trump to do what he did in 2016 and in 2024. Like, he was the most famous guy in the world. He was the rich guy. He was so brash. He was so camera ready. Like, there's just like all these things that come together. Like, Republicans have won 2 popular votes in the 21st century. Okay, like to go back to the 30s, you have to go back to like when I was 15 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's
Cookie
really bad. George W. Bush, they won in 2004, which was.
Thank you for the 10 subs, man. I appreciate that. Wow, W Cookie Wook. Thank you, man.
It was a different country.
Thank you so much.
And we were in a war.
What a legend. We love Cookie Wook. Everyone say W Cookie in the chat right now. That's awesome. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate that.
Since then, no Republicans have won the popular vote. Donald Trump got it this last time.
Big O sevens.
People do not understand the gap between what Donald Trump has versus what Marco Rubio has, what J.D. Vance has.
Right.
It was already a huge ask for them to carry this coalition forward. Like, it's over, dude. It has nothing to do with how me or you feel. You know, that's it.
Oh, apparently
none of these guys
Candace
can win.
Owens is doing an interview with Hunter Biden on Thursday.
Rating about where George
that should be
W. Bush's
interesting.
was
Did you guys see
after
that?
2 disastrous wars and an economic collapse.
I'm gonna pull that up real
this
quick,
isn't a matter of me or you. It's like, no, listen, dude, the only option here is that another outsider emerges, which is possible. No one would have picked Donald Trump at this point. We'd be in 2014. No one would have picked Donald Trump was going to be president.
I'm gonna mute this for just a second.
So like, there are some, maybe someone will emerge.
I'm gonna mute this for just a second because it's just Dave Smith yapping.
Disturbing material.
You have access to that.
I'm kind of curious about this, actually.
Laptop.
A jury found Hunter Biden guilty of 3 felony gun charges.
It's pretty good.
I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Oopsies. He lied. He pardoned a crackhead. Hunter Biden. Welcome to the Candace Owens Show.
I've heard you call me a crackhead many times, and the truth of the matter is, I was a crackhead. The quote-unquote laptop, which, by the way, you know what the laptop proved?
That you were a crackhead.
There you go. My marriage fell apart, and it just started a really, really dark cycle. My brother called me and said, this has got to stop. And it forced me into a choice. And the choice was, do I get out of bed and live?
I do
do I
kind of
die?
like legitimately feel bad for
DC
Hunter
is
Biden
corrupt.
in a way.
Politics is corrupt.
But
You know what I
something's
mean?
changed, Candace. It's not left or right. The DC elite of the left, they crushed my dad because he was never part of that club. He was never part of the Epstein class. You know one thing he didn't do? He didn't greenlight to turn Gaza into a Trump golf course with the maitre d' being Jared Kushner. War in Iran that they started, that every president before him was pressured
Hunter
by the
Biden's
Israelis.
cooking, actually.
I
here.
do think there was
Kinda-
something about the
definitely.
Charlie Kirk assassination that everyone just sort of looked up.
They're the people that Charlie Kirk made. The level of disloyalty or fear, I don't know what it is. And the criticism of you for asking the questions for someone who was like a brother to you, it's like, what the F are you talking about? I listen to you
Okay,
and I
he's
go,
losing me here.
right on. The Acts of John, there is a thing that Christ says, you must learn to suffer as I do in order to be able
He's getting
not
me
to
back.
suffer.
He's getting me back.
And that is the greatest lesson of everything.
Okay, I will be watching that though. I will be watching. That's crazy. That's a good get. Hey, W. Candace, honestly, good get.
Going to stand up to
I'm
the
excited.
Israel lobby.
We will-
How are
and we
they
will
gonna
be
more
watching.
immigration restrictionist?
And we will
I don't
be
think
watching.
anyone would really believe that. And so you either get a continuation of
If that's
the-
paywalled,
you know,
I'm gonna
if it's even
chimp
possible
out.
they
I'm gonna
win
chimp the
because
fuck
they're
out.
attached to this
That better not be
administration.
paywalled,
You either
I
get
swear.
a continuation of this, which we all recognize is not a solution for
There's
anything.
no way she paywalls
The
that
best
one, 'cause
people
that's so
say is
huge.
it's worse than, or rather, it's better than total destruction under Democrats. Or they say something like, well, it's buying us time. It's letting us have some sort of like salutary neglect, like the Democrats aren't killing us with censorship and debanking. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is it's a Democrat. And so you say, that's a scenario where there's no winning option.
Yeah.
Like, victory is not a possibility on your timeline. So what you're doing is you're playing not to lose. You're hoping that we don't get the worst thing, we don't get the worst defeat condition, but you're not even really concerned about how we win. How do we get mass deportations? How do we get the rest of it? At least if you say, we're going to punish Republicans, like this administration needs to fail, everyone in it needs to burn down and be weakened by it, at least then there's a possibility in 28 that the Trump administration alum are so unpopular, even in a primary, that somebody else could actually emerge and then run. Because the biggest concern is that, look, we all know this, the party is consolidating around Vance or Rubio. The money, the actual party apparatus, and what they're going to try to do is make it so there isn't a competition.
I like
They're
how
gonna
there's
make
just
it
like
so that
office
there's
workers in the
one clear
background back
guy,
there.
probably the Trump backs, someone
Some
from
guy
the
back there
admin,
just
like
filing
Vance or
his
Rubio.
taxes.
That person's going to get 70% of the vote. There's going to be a bunch of also-rans, and they're just going to jam that guy through so he can campaign really without a primary fight
You see that
throughout
guy?
27 and
He's
28,
just
and
back
then, you
there
know,
just
lock it up for the next 4 years. And so the biggest
Piling his
threat
taxes.
actually is that candidate will be too strong and suffocate any possible challenger, any dark horse, an outsider. And by the way, if we get an outsider, that might be your victory. That might be your victory condition, where it is someone
That's
who was
production.
from that Trump coalition, saw where it went wrong, wants to fulfill the promises of it without kind of rejecting the fundamental premise. Someone like that
Brother, I
can
know,
emerge.
okay, I
And then,
know.
you know, if that person wins,
it's
then
called a
maybe
joke,
that person
dude.
can actually deliver the victory. But
Oh
that's
my
why I say,
God.
you know, people are always saying like, well, who's that person going to be? Well, you don't know if that's even going to happen. It's like, well, we have to create the possibility that
that's
we
the
can
production
win.
guy.
Otherwise,
He's
we're
not filing
accepting
these taxes,
defeat. Like you said
actually.
earlier, either
Okay,
we're going
dude.
90 miles per hour or 85 miles per hour off the cliff.
To be honest, I'm not even sure it's 85. Like
Right,
this
right.
might be just as fast, dude. It's just a different thing. I mean, it's like in the same sense, like why do I hate the Democrats? It's like, I don't know, because like they I don't know, they're fiscally insane. They opened our borders. This is chaos and destruction. They push this trans insanity on little kids. This is evil, and this is abortion.
Yeah,
and
also
murder.
tax
This
season
is
is
death.
past.
It's like,
Okay,
this is
all
all
right.
destruction and death, and it's just, this is all
He
horrible.
filed
I'm
an
not
extension, and
actually
he's
sure
doing
which
them
one
now.
is worse, to be honest. They're
Debunked.
all very
Debunked,
bad.
okay.
And, you know, I guess maybe one of the things that's kind of frustrating about even having these debates is that it's nuanced and it's complex and it's broad. And like, for example, okay, so Pat Buchanan, who is really a hero of mine, I'd imagine like someone you would really admire as well. Brilliant conservative.
I didn't get debunked. I debunked him. He filed
would
an
always come
extension.
back and
Now he's
support
filing his
Republicans.
taxes.
Yes.
You know,
So fuck
and
you.
he would eviscerate them.
Fuck
I mean,
you.
he would just like take them down, but he'd always come back and support them. And so he would be totally against George H.W. Bush in '92 because he's furious about the Persian Gulf War, although he never really made that as central of an issue as I think he should have. But, you know, who am I to pick on a great man like that? But then he'd come back and he'd primary him. But then he'd lose and he'd come back and you get that great famous culture war speech from Pat Buchanan at
Yes.
the RNC, which is, by the way, anyone should go listen to that speech. So beautifully done. I really admire great speech writing. He was a great speechwriter. But anyway, but that speech, the context of it, is that he's at the RNC to bring the Buchanan, what did they call it?
Brigade.
The Buchanan Brigade back into the Republican Party. And he would make arguments like, hey, look, we feel how we feel. We disagree on all these issues, but whose Supreme Court justice picks are you going to like more? George H.W. Bush or Bill Clinton? On environmentalism, he's better. On tax policy, he's better. On all these. And like, now I tend to kind of disagree with that. And I loved Ron Paul. Ron Paul would never come back and endorse the candidate. But, you know, the thing is that in 1992, I can't understand Pat Buchanan's argument. Because if you have a generally healthy country, and we could get into debating whether we were generally healthy or not, but compared to today, we're a much healthier country, you know, much less divisive politically. The demographics were, you know, what traditional American demographics had been for most of the time, which
so sick of the Ron Paul glazing,
are conducive
dude.
to less cultural divides, let's say. We were not $40 trillion in debt. We were not like a failing empire. You know, things were, and in a healthy society, it kind of does make sense to go, look, I know there's a wish list of what we want, but let's go for better rather than worse. Again, when you have stage 4 cancer and you're terminally ill, that's like when you go like, no, if we just get what is maybe slightly better, we die. Like this nation dies if we do that. So I guess part of it is that we're just arguing that like, no, the situation is actually that dire right now that we have to go for something better than this.
Well, that's the nail on the head. And, you know, I would even say something more controversial, which is, and no one's going to like this.
More controversial than me?
Well, controversial for people that like us, for the fans, but they need to hear this. I respect Pat Buchanan. He's brilliant. Obviously, off the charts, brilliant, great writer. Red-pilled me with Death of the West and
great book.
Everything. But he is a loser. And I don't say that to be nasty, but he lost. He lost 3 times, right? He lost in 92, 96, lost for reform in 2000. And, you know, it's funny. Sam Francis, who was a friend of his, he wrote an article about his endorsement of Bush in 92 and said that was Buchanan's biggest mistake.
I've never read that. Oh,
it's
that's
very interesting. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please do.
But he wrote it at the time and said that's Buchanan's mistake, is that he always comes back to support the GOP. Why? You're at war with them. They're the enemy. They're the problem. And it's because he is the congenital conservative. And by conservative, I don't mean right-wing. It's this risk aversion. He's not revolutionary.
Yeah.
He's a reformer. And so in the end, they will always come back to the vomit.
Yeah.
The dog will always come back to eat its vomit. They will always come back to endorse the conservative. And I think, by the way, that's now why there's this, people are becoming more comfortable with Pat Buchanan. Because 20 years ago, he was kicked off MSNBC for Suicide of a Superpower, which he was going to call it The Death of Whitey. That was actually the original title.
Is that true?
Yes.
No.
Sam Francis says this,
so, Is that true? So there was a chapter in the book called, like, The End of White America. It was, like, close to that.
Yes.
One of the chapters. Great book, by the way. Suicide of a Superpower. Highly recommend it.
But that was going to be the title. And point being is he was super controversial back then. You know, Shapiro called him a Nazi in 2016. He's alt-right, whatever. Now, I feel like people are coming around to his legacy. So some of these heritage Americans, pro-Trump people, they're embracing him. But why? Because he lost. And when you lose, you become inert. You're no longer threatening.
Well, and there's a good point too.
And so I love
bring it up
Pat
here in a
Buchanan.
minute.
However, Francis also wrote a book called Beautiful Losers about the conservatives, and basically saying that conservatives are so principled, but they lose all the time. Like, we're losing the culture war, we're losing the immigration
But if you
war,
remember,
and they would rather lose.
I think
as
part of the reason why Trump
civil,
won in 2016
principled,
was because
whatever
during the
you
debate
want
he
to say
refused
about
to
them,
endorse
kind of like
the winner of the
Rockefeller
primary.
Republicans
Remember
and
that?
actually
That was
get
like a big
dirty
point.
and fight and win. And in the end, is it not the paleocons that were the beautiful losers? Is it not those people that, you know, they kind of
You guys remember
went
that?
down
They
without
asked
a
Trump
huge,
if he would,
ugly
if he
fight?
would endorse
And I think about what
the
is
winner of the
different
primary
between
if it wasn't
Buchanan
him. He
and
said
Trump.
no.
In 2016, when Trump was running in the primary, they said, will you endorse the eventual nominee
Wow.
if you don't get it? And Trump said no.
Yeah.
He said, I have a lot of leverage. He said, so I'd like to run as the Republican.
Mind link.
But if I can't have the nomination, then maybe I'll run independent. And they said, well, Hillary Clinton will surely win. And he said, well, yeah, then elect me as the Republican. Otherwise, I'll tank the whole thing. And to me, that's like, and I told them that actually at the dinner. I said, that is when you were at your apex because you were playing to win. That's when I knew you were serious. You weren't just going to say,
Nobody ever been to
well,
doubt me, by the way.
if I win, I win. If I don't, I guess
I
we'll
am,
just
like,
have
locked
Republicans.
the
It's like
fuck
that
in.
burn the boats mentality. That's what we as the base need to develop, that kind of consciousness or that leadership.
No, I get what you're saying. You know,
I'm a
I'm sorry to
studied
keep picking on
AF
Stephen Crowder. It's
warrior,
nothing against Stephen
okay?
Crowder. It's just that literally this is what I'm thinking of when you say this. But so when I was debating Stephen Crowder, he was very upset that I had called for Trump's impeachment. I had called for Trump's
People just don't get it. I'm tapped the fuck in,
the
right?
12-day war.
I'm tapped the fuck in.
Just launched an illegal war, and this is what we all voted against. And yeah, I'm for. Now, Crowder starts then getting into this argument. He's like, but if we impeached Donald Trump, then Nancy Pelosi has control. And I was like, well, first off, that would put J.D. Vance in as president.
Right.
But then at a certain point, I went, Stephen, when I say we should impeach Donald Trump, you realize I'm not a congressman who's introducing articles of impeachment. There's no point
I hate
that
this
believe
whole
this is
act,
going
though.
to result
I
in
don't
this
have any
process
influence
then the
and I
benefit
have
of
no
that process.
say. I'm
Obviously,
just a
all I'm saying
guy.
is, like,
I'm just a guy.
I publicly supported Donald Trump, and now I am saying in the loudest possible language that I'm out. I'm done. And I do think there's part of
I
my
hate
thinking
this whole
there
like little thing with
was
him.
along the lines
I'm just
of
a
what
little
you're
guy.
saying,
I'm
where
just
it's
a
like,
comedian.
no, look, dude, this only works
Okay.
if there's like a profit and loss system.
Right.
Like there has to be like, okay,
hate
you
that. I
promised
hate
me
that.
no
I just
new
hate
wars,
that
I
sort of
publicly support
false
you.
humility,
You launch a new
you know what I
war,
mean?
I publicly, not just like don't support you, but like fuck you, die a million deaths, you'll never get my support again. Because otherwise, like, I don't know, there's just got to be some type of incentive for, like, if you want to come do this. I don't know, we don't have much, but the one thing we do have is that we can very publicly say, no, Vance, Rubio, none of you are getting this coalition, and therefore at least there's some political incentive of, like, someone want to come pick up this coalition or not. I do agree with you that, or at least I agree, you know, I don't think Patrick Buchanan's a loser, but politically, I get your point, he did lose. I think that there's something, especially now, when supermajorities of the American people are against this war. Supermajorities of the American people are against Biden's immigration policy. You know, supermajorities are against the woke, trans, insane shit. Supermajorities think that inflation is the number one issue. When you have that type of dynamic, we should be playing to win. Like,
Right.
why can't we win this country? You know what I mean? Like, there is
Yeah.
not, it is, if there was an open primary right now, now don't get me wrong, I want to be honest about this. If someone were to run on your most radical views or my most radical views, they probably could not win with that.
Right.
But if there was like open primaries on the Democrat and Republican side right now, and someone were to run on a full separation of Israel and America, like we're treating it like church and state, a full separation of Israel and America, dissolving the Israel lobby entirely, if they were to run on closing the border and an immigration moratorium, if they were to run on, fiscal sanity, no new wars, no, like there are major pieces here that could absolutely be a winning coalition in this country. That was not the case when Pat Buchanan was running. That wasn't the case when Ron Paul was running for president. And so, like, we do live in a new dynamic with new realities. And I agree with you. I think we shouldn't be, we shouldn't concede that, well, if it's a little bit better than the Democrats, then we support it. And we shouldn't concede that, like, hey, you go out there and you completely lose, but you were politically noble and you made some good points and that's enough. Because at the end of the day, none of that saves the country.
Right. Well, and think about it. What if Buchanan had not endorsed George Bush? He would have lost anyway. And what would have been the lesson in 92? It's like, maybe we should have been more conservative. Maybe in 96, we run somebody that gets the Buchanan
Well, by the
brigades.
way, just to even strengthen your point here, right? Because when he's giving the culture war speech at the RNC in 92, he's already lost George H.W. Bush goes on to lose to Bill Clinton anyway.
Exactly.
So the Buchanan Brigade did not make the difference, but if he had withheld that, it may have been seen as maybe that would have made the difference.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It would have been ambiguous. And more to the point, we have to think about those second and third order consequences. People say, well, what if a Democrat wins? Yeah, what if? What you're talking about is moral hazard, which is if there's no consequences for your actions, then they will get away with anything. And I said this to Crowder. It's like, dude, we're in a war with Iran. At what point will you stop supporting Trump? What would he have to do to lose your support? Because if you're willing to tolerate that, you'll tolerate anything. And if you tolerate anything, you will be forced to tolerate anything. That's sort of where we are. And so it's important to now and again, and like I said this to Crowder, like, I wouldn't want a Democrat to become the president because I think that's really bad for everybody. But where you can and where it makes sense, you have to impose some kind of a cost. Just so you tell them, like, we will not put up with this, we will not tolerate it. And I always tell people, that's just playing both sides. That's just basic game theory. And by the way, everybody else does it. The donors do it in particular. How many of these pro-Israel people were lifelong Democrats until October 7th? And then they threw their weight around behind the Republicans to get concessions. Same thing with little tech. Elon Musk, was he ever a Republican up until a few years ago when he started getting heat from the Biden DOJ and getting all these problems? No. So
Tulsi, Bobby,
exactly. And they will move their money around whoever is going to help them. The donors do it. By the way, the Israel lobby does it. Ben Shapiro in 2016 said, let Hillary Clinton win. Trump, we can't trust him. He's not a real conservative. So we just need that kind of leadership and kind of like our mojo as the base to say, we need to be in the driver's seat, not people telling us, oh, we'll get him next time. Oh, well, we built, 36 inches of wall or whatever. That's how we got to think going forward.
Millions of inches.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, a good example of that I don't know if you saw this, but when Donald Trump first announced the ceasefire with Iran, Mark Levin was out there, like, really counter-signaling him hard.
Right.
What do you mean, sir? They still have all the enriched uranium. They're still supporting the proxies. This terror regime still stands. So it's not like they won't flip on a dime. So essentially, why shouldn't I do the same thing? And I do got to say, and I'm sure you feel this way too, to some degree at least, right? But there seems like there's kind of a thing where, okay, because of the mix of where technology kind of grew and people's disgust.
How long have we been watching this? How deep are we into this?
For being liars, this whole industry has been revolutionized, and now for the first time,
we're an hour and a half in.
Things that are much different than.
So we're halfway through it. We're halfway through it, chat.
Days are that I shouldn't say they're. Pat Buchanan's still alive, but I mean,
I want to get to the because it says in the chapters
like,
there's some juicy stuff.
We kind of have a fighting shot in the conversation now,
right?
We actually get our rebuttal.
Tucker, this is what I'm going to get. Dan Bilzerian.
There's still dynamics where there's certain groups like
we'll get to that in like 15 minutes. Dan Bilzerian, Tucker Carlson, Chud the Builders, Nico's falling out.
They don't get to
Venezuela
hear from
war.
You. Right? Like they hear.
That's what I want to get to.
About you,
the drama.
I
want the
else,
drama,
but they may not like actually hear like what
I want
you're
the
really
drama.
Saying. But for huge other swaths of an audience,
and I want you to support the stream of Power Channel, also Spirits and Beard Leaf, and enjoy the content
too. And this is true for a lot of us. And broadly speaking, people, let's say, who have been, because me and you represent different worldviews and different principles, but broadly speaking, let's say the people who are critical of Israel or critical of this war or critical of open borders or critical.
His voice puts me to sleep. It's just like we all know, and that's the problem. This isn't for us.
Debates, to have
we all know this stuff.
And we have just won.
And
we have
so
won
it's
the
like,
argument with the American people. Like,
what do you do?
There just is no question. Like, who is, if you look at like me and you, and then say throw in like Tucker and Candace and Megan, or just like broadly
we all know
speaking,
this stuff. We've all seen it, so it's like
versus Lindsey Graham.
What is there else left to say?
I keep doing these debates, but at this point, I almost say like the debate's over. This is just a formality.
Right.
When I go on Piers Morgan today to debate a Zionist, it's like I've already won. We know I've won. We know you've like this side has dominated. This is a pro-Palestinian country at this point. And yet we still lose the policy. And there is something about that that's fucking intolerable. Like, no, fuck you. and this is the most little d Democrat I'll ever be in my life, but like there is something like, hey, no, we had the open debate, we had the marketplace of ideas, and you guys got fucking schooled. So why the fuck should Mark Levin still get? No one thinks Mark Levin got Donald Trump elected, but Tucker Carlson played a major role. So why do we get the policies of him versus him? This is just wrong, and it's not just wrong. It's so intolerable that you're like, I just can't go along with that.
It is intolerable, and you realize that there's no relationship between what the public supports and the policies we get, because arguably the country's never been more anti-Israel, and yet the policies have never been more pro-Israel, right? Like from Harvard and what they're doing, Department of Ed, to the visas, to obviously what's going on in Israel. There's literally no limit to what they're able to get away with, and you'd never know it if you go on the internet on the right and the left. You go on Instagram and you're getting like AI translated Hitler speeches and like normies from like Southern universities
that
are
popped
like,
the guy in the background, dude.
Points, you know? That's the right way.
Look, guy in the background,
who's
tax
like
guys,
pro-terrorism,
that popped him, dude. That popped him. Let's go. I love Booth guy.
So I wonder what the government looks like. Like we must have some kind of anti-Semitic regime. It's like, nope, we're in a war with Iran. If you criticize
Booth guy
Israel,
heard Hitler. I was like, hang on, let me stop filing my taxes for a minute.
So, and that's where I tell people, what is enough? What's your limit before you say we're out? Because people are still, it's just
Dave
pure
Smith,
cope.
Booth guy,
people just say,
so true.
No, here's how we can
Dave
still
Smith,
win.
Booth
We
guy.
can get it back on track. They really want to, but they can't.
We
it's
love
like,
Booth guy. Booth guy seems
It's not
awesome.
even so much people say what candidate.
I fuck with
it's
Booth
just
guy
about
heavy.
rejection. Like, no, I reject this. I reject this. No, this is not good enough. And moreover, and you already said this, but it's true. We are in such a bad situation.
Should we do a Booth guy sticker?
The only thing that will fix the country is radical intervention. Otherwise, the country dies. $40 trillion debt, 50 million illegals,
Maybe we need a Booth guy
demographic
sticker.
change. The country is already dead. It's just dying in slow motion.
Oh yeah, not even that slow. I mean, yeah.
No, yeah, right. I mean, these days very quickly, but it's like you're either going to have a radical intervention or you're going to die. Are Vance and Rubio radical? No. Are the Democrats going to be radical? Well, they're part of the problem. The only thing that's going to solve it is if you just get a different option. So for me, it's just like, let's just reshuffle and re-roll until we get something different. And that's what a lot of Republicans just can't handle. They don't have the imagination for that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was. I was never a Republican partisan, so it just was easier for me to kind of come to that conclusion, but I completely agree with you on that. Not that I'm saying the Libertarian Party is the answer or something like that. I don't know, but obviously.
What do you mean you don't know? It's not.
So I want to talk to you about Thomas Massey's election, his primary, which is coming up, I believe, the day after tomorrow. This is a really fascinating. I think the most fascinating House primary election I've ever seen. It's the more money has been spent on this election than any other. This, speaking of intolerable, I mean, this is really like quite an example of so Thomas Massey. I mean, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but he won his previous primaries with like 78%, 85%. It was just has been a multiple successful winner, political winner, at least in his district in Kentucky. He really angered the Israel lobby, particularly in his Tucker Carlson interview, where he exposed that he's the only one who doesn't have an AIPAC handler, and like was doing something that, even like guys like, say, me or you, or people who are very critical of the Israel lobby, aren't exactly explaining like the nuts and bolts of the logistics of how it works in Congress. And he was really explaining that. Then, of course, he made his famous stand to get the Epstein files declassified and really embarrassed the administration, and kind of through some political maneuvering was actually able to kind of like get them to tap out and release it. And then, of course, he opposes both the 12-day war and this current war in Iran. And so this has now gotten the Israel lobby has poured tens of millions of dollars, or at least $20 million, I think, has been put into the race, and they've made it a much more competitive race. This, to me, is going to be very interesting to see what happens here. I saw Michael Knowles tweeted the other day when there's this stuff that's going on, which I'm sure you've been seeing, but it's like obvious op stuff, obvious op. I mean, like literally like 3 days before the election, all of a sudden there's a scandal. All of a sudden there's one woman with no corroborating accounts
it's
who
such
says
bullshit.
he paid me hush money. Not even a alleging criminal activity or anything like that. Then the betting markets start like changing. Clearly, people are putting money in and influencing this. So Michael Knowles over at the Daily Wire, who I don't dislike Michael Knowles, but his take on this was he goes, man, if Thomas Massie loses, this just shows the iron grip that Donald Trump has on the Republican Party.
Oh, brother.
And you're like, dude. I mean, I think it shows the iron grip that the Israel lobby has. If they like that might be a slightly more accurate take. But then I also go, and I'll be interested because I think Thomas Massie's going to win. I think it's close, but I think he's going to pull this off. I wonder what Michael Knowles' reaction to that will be. So if it proves that Trump has an iron grip when Massie falls down, what about when Thomas Massie wins and survives $20 million being pumped into his district? What would that suggest? So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on Thomas Massie and on this race?
Well, I like Thomas Massie. I mean, he is a libertarian. So
yeah.
I don't agree.
So what's wrong with us?
I don't agree with him on everything.
Sure.
But I support him only because he has made himself this kind of rallying point against AIPAC because, like you said, he took that stand on the interview and he voted against foreign aid to Israel in 24, among other things. So it's just a no-brainer to support him in the primary and just in general because it's symbolic. He is one of the only Republicans that's consistently gone against Israel, and there's no question that's exactly why they're coming for him. And they did this in 24. AIPAC did against Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush and a few other progressive Democrats. They spent $100 million in the 24 cycle, and in particular trying to primary everybody that voted against that foreign aid bill. And I believe it was April of 24 when they greenlit $25 billion for Israel, when they defended themselves against Iran or whatever it was, so they could fight Gaza more. And so that's what they do. They're doing it on the Republican side. And I agree with you. I think he'll win, but it is interesting. That is how they convince themselves that it is in Israel. Like I've seen the take from Michael Knowles. I've seen many people say this, that what's the real reason Massie is terrible? Well, it's not because he happens to be the one Republican against AIPAC. No. It's because he votes against Trump. He's like not a diligent enough Republican partisan. He's not a loyal member of the conference. And it gets back to even we talked about was frustrating about my debate with Crowder. Like it's along that same theme.
Yeah.
It's like, so do you really believe that? Like, I know that's like, you can look at any answer and some of them have explanatory power. Like, it's true that Massie's anti-Republican, but is that plausible? Like, do you think that's actually true? Obviously not. And Michael Knowles, like, he went to Yale. So you think that this is really about AIPAC spent $20 million to buttress Trump's loyalty?
Yeah.
Obviously, this is about something else. And, you wonder what's going on with Michael Knowles. Well, he works for Shapiro.
Oh, here we go,
doesn't
Michael
help.
Weinhardt.
But these are the things they
if you
tell
apologize
themselves
for what you
about
said
the
about
party.
Nick, I'll consider it.
They say the Iran war is about China. They say Massey's about Trump. They say everything is about everything other
really
than what it's
fucked up.
actually about. And that's when you want to say, so are you a liar? Are you a fucking liar?
Do you see Trump literally after meeting with Xi said we're going to be sending tons of oil to China?
Yeah.
We're going to be, tell me this was all about starving resources to China. The levels of cope. But it couldn't be this lobby that's openly lobbied for this for 30 years.
I just need an
the
apology
longest-serving
from
prime
Lionheart
minister
for what he
in
said about
Israel-
Nick.
In
and
Israeli
maybe
history, said after we launched the war that this was a culmination of his entire life's work. But let's ignore that, that probably has nothing to do with that. No, I mean, that's, I think, what frustrated me. There was this one time that J.D. Vance was asked about Thomas Massie, and he basically just said, he goes, look, man, he just keeps voting against us. And at a certain point, like, this is politics, man. If you keep voting against us, we're not going to support you. And I remember hearing that and just going, yeah, okay. Because that just basically backs up everything we've been saying. That's right, it's politics. And us never supporting you again is also politics.
Right.
So, like, okay, you're not voting with me. Okay, well, you're trying to unseat. Now, obviously, you like Thomas Massie, but you're not a libertarian. I like him, and I am a libertarian. So to me, it's just like the absolute. You're trying to take away the one guy that I have who represents me in Congress for the crime of telling the truth about some important issues. Like, okay, cool. Go fuck yourself, and I'll never support you ever again. I mean, that's politics, right? Anyway, it will just be very interesting. They've really smeared the guy, and of course the millions of dollars that they're pouring in are being used for these ad campaigns. It's all ridiculous shit. I also hate
and to pay women to pretend like they were sexually assaulted
I'll
by
see this
him.
thing like out of conservatives sometimes.
That's what it
where they
is.
just like they do the same shit the Democrats do after they were just blasting the Democrats for doing that.
Right.
You know, like I remember even late great Charlie Kirk. No, disrespect. I liked Charlie and stuff, but I remember I used to see this out of him sometimes. It would really bother me. Where like during Obama, you'd see Obama would brag about the unemployment rate. And then he would go, yeah, but the unemployment rate is bullshit because it doesn't account, my words, not his, he wouldn't have cursed. But he goes, that the unemployment rate doesn't account for people who have given up entirely on looking for work, which is like fair point. And then Donald Trump comes in and he goes, lowest unemployment rate ever. You're like, oh, all of a sudden that number is good.
Right.
They just do this type of thing. So then they start doing the thing where they go, Thomas Massie voted against border security. And you're like, no, he didn't, dude. He voted against a 3,000-page bill that spent like $3 trillion. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, no, dude. He did, if you ever put that standalone, he would vote for that. That's not the issue. And so they're just like a lot of dirty tricks.
How much to ban him?
But I'm like, I just don't like seeing this against like one of. Forget even whether you're a libertarian or anything
$1,000. I'll
else.
ban him.
Thomas Massie is like one of the few decent guys.
I will sell you up for
$1,000.
Right.
He's running on what he believes in. He's voting. His voting.
That's a pretty
track
good price,
record
though. I
backs up
feel
what
like.
he
I feel like it's a
told
pretty
you
good
he was gonna
price.
vote when he doesn't go in there. Like to go after
$1,000 is a
not
lot
just
of
try to
retro
unseat
games,
him,
though.
but to really try to like ruin the guy's life. I really just, I don't know.
It's a lot of retro
the way
games.
Trump, the way
That's
Trump's
like
gone
that could
after
finish
him
my
and
Resident
Joe
Evil
Kent
and
for
Silent
getting
Hill collections,
remarried
probably.
is like I just find disgusting. Particularly when Donald Trump, in the case of Joe Kent, his wife died.
I don't
Syria
collect Neo Geo,
under
dude.
you.
Right.
Like,
PS1, PS2,
again, I'm
GameCube,
sympathetic to Trump
Dreamcast,
supporters
Xbox,
because I think for a long
PS3.
time he was like the only weapon you had.
That's-
and, oh my
that's
God,
what
we
I'm
actually
saying.
get a fighting shot against this evil regime.
Liner
And so
has to
people forget a
apologize
lot of
to
his
me
kind of
too for the emotional
vulgar,
trauma of having to
you know,
ban him for what he
stuff,
said.
but
I
you're
imagine that was
dude,
tough.
you're not
Yeah,
a piece of shit,
Dangy,
man.
I
Like,
imagine
you're really a
that was
piece
tough.
of shit. You're the one who fucking cheats all over.
I hate
your
that you had to
wife
go
and
through
fucks
that. I'm
porn
sorry,
stars and has
honestly.
3
I
different marriages
apologize
and shit.
that you had to go through that.
Dude,
But
this
W
guy,
mod.
he lost his
W
wife
mod.
to a suicide bomber in Syria, a war you were supposed to get us out of and didn't, and now you're trashing him for getting married 2 years later. Just so bizarre, man. I don't know.
He is. He's wicked. He's a wicked human being,
Yeah.
and he's really showed his hand. I mean, because you're right. 10 years ago, I think the way people saw it is that the left was so powerful and so evil. It felt like they were unstoppable and nothing could ever change. It was so oppressive and suffocating. I remember it growing up. The political correctness, the liberal media, and it just felt like Republicans were pussies. Like they could never win and they would never fight back. And, these guys like Mitt Romney and John McCain, they were complete losers.
They're there to lose, essentially. Like that's the point of them, is to lose it. It's like wrestling, like to lose and get this guy over while
exactly.
I lose.
Yeah, they were there to basically, it's a fix. They were there to throw. And so you see Trump, and he was what he was, but we said, okay, he's the underdog. He's fighting for us. He's brash. He's a little unconventional. But maybe he can win. And now you kind of see all these years later, I think that maybe his true self just emerged. You realize like he sort of is everything they said that he was, which is he is a liar. It is really all just about vanity and glory and his own what's the word? Self-aggrandizement.
Yeah,
I mean that's really what it was always about.
You're sorry
and even these
for
things
what?
like comparing himself
What are you
to
sorry
Jesus,
for? Trashing Nick?
talking about killing Persia on Easter. No happy Easter, by the way. Not Christ is risen. We're gonna kill a civilization tomorrow.
Which is fairly
Just say
inconsistent with Christ's message, from my understanding.
Yeah, it's a little. You know what? It is consistent. It's consistent with the message of Purim, the Jewish holiday. Inconsistent a little bit though with Easter, and so,
listen, the Old Testament God was a bit meaner.
It's a little more hardcore. Yeah,
that's true.
Some of the Marcionites have something to say about that, but but yeah. So he's a wicked human being, and like you said, it's such a good point. When it's Thomas Massie, they go, "Yeah, well, that's politics. Well, that's just how the cookie crumbles." Oh, you're not voting for us in the midterms? Oh my gosh, you're a left-wing Democrat. I can't believe you. And at the end of the day, Charlie Kirk, say what you want, he was on the team. He was with them.
Yep.
And even with Iran, people say, no, he was coming around. He was about to flip. He was really going to be based. When Trump bombed Iran the first time, Charlie Kirk defended it. And they did the same goalpost thing. When Israel started the war, Charlie said, we shouldn't get involved. We need to stay out of this. It's Israel's thing. When we got involved by shooting down the missiles, he said, well, we shouldn't get involved offensively.
Yeah.
We can. And then it was, but we shouldn't bomb Iran. Then we bomb Iran. Well, we shouldn't do regime change. Then Trump said on True Social, well, I think we should do a regime change. And then Charlie Kirk said, well, guys, there's a big difference between a bottom-up revolution and a top-down regime change. We support a revolution. And so it's like anything that Trump would have done, he would have supported.
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's
another
show, which,
sponsor.
of course, is Body Brain Coffee. And the big news is that the Body Brain
The way they
creamer
retconned Kirk was
is officially
crazy.
here.
I
don't
know,
about you,
right?
but I like creamer
Well, it's just
in my
like, dude, it's
coffee.
the
And Body
same
Brain
thing
put
with
out
like
their
Chud the
creamer,
Builder.
which
It's like
perfectly
everybody
partners with Body
just,
Brain
you know, something
Coffee.
bad
It's
happens.
all
I get
good
you're
for you. It's
emotional
not the
about it,
cream
but
you
like,
get
can we
at the
just be honest
supermarket
about
that's
how
sugary and has a bunch of crap in it.
these
In the
people
spirit of
were,
Body
you know,
Brain,
like,
it's
let's be
all
honest
good
here. I
ingredients
don't know
that
why.
will
There's
be
just this sort of
helpful
like
for you. It's
weird
stuff that helps with
retconning
stress
and
focus
revisionist
and
history
overall
when it comes
vitality. So it's
to
perfect to pair with Body
people
Brain
all of a
Coffee,
sudden.
which, of
You know what I
course,
mean? It's really
naturally
weird. It's just so
boosts
dishonest. I
testosterone.
just don't want
This
anything
way,
to do
it's not
with
like a
it.
sports
You know?
drink or
It's
some
weird.
weird
I gotta take a
health
leak,
drink. It's
dude.
a cup of
Hey,
coffee.
this isn't a
with
poop.
some
I'm just gonna
creamer,
take a leak.
1 cup a
But
day.
support the
You're gonna
stream.
feel
Power
better.
channel
I've been
host Beardson
drinking this stuff
Beardly.
for
If
months
you're enjoying the
now, and it
content,
feels
sub.
great.
If you're not subbed
Go
already,
check
and if
them
you're
out.
already subbed, give some subs.
BodyBrainCoffee.com.
Let's go.
Of course, this is the creation of the great Louis J. Gomez, who convinced me to start part of the problem. So if you love this show, make sure you go support them and get yourself a delicious cup of coffee. Naturally boosts testosterone. You're going to feel great. BodyBrainCoffee.com. Promo code DAVE20 for 20% off your entire order. One more time, that's BodyBrainCoffee.com. Promo code DAVE20 for 20% off. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Ridge. I love the Ridge wallet. I've owned the Ridge wallet for many years. I don't know if you're one of those people who has a traditional leather wallet. I used to be
Ridge
that
Wallet
guy
is
for
a
long
Jewish
time,
company,
but
by
you
the
live
way.
in
Don't
the
buy a Ridge
1980s
Wallet. Do
or
not buy a
something.
Ridge
You don't
Wallet.
need all
Jewish
that.
company.
Ridge
Jewish
is a
company.
futuristic minimalist wallet.
They're
really
Jewish.
Cool. They're made with aluminum, titanium,
They
carbon
suck.
fiber. They're like these cool metallic
But if they wanted to
looking
sponsor me, I
wallets.
would
They hold your
absolutely take
card,
that
they hold your
sponsorship.
cash.
And I
They're a
love
real
Ridge Wallet.
conversation starter, a great gift for like a guy who's difficult to get gifts for.
If they want to
All
sponsor
Ridge
me.
products
We
have
really need a
lifetime
stream sponsor, I
warranty,
feel
so
like.
this
I
is
need a
literally
stream
the last
sponsor.
wallet that you will ever have to get.
You know,
It
I want
comes with
to get some
RFID
get some
blocking
sponsors for the
technology, so you don't have
streams,
to
you
worry
know. I
about
feel like that would be
hackers.
good.
They have over 100,000 5-star reviews. Check them out for yourself at ridge.com. Ridge.com is the website, and make sure to use the promo code POTP10. That will get you 10% off.
I think
your
it'd be good.
entire
Coca-Cola?
order. Check
Well,
them
I'm
out,
more of a
ridge.com,
Diet Mountain Dew
promo
guy,
code
but
POTP10
I'll
for
do it.
10% off.
What's
All right,
religion
let's
have
get
to
back
do with a wallet?
Well, my read on
Well,
Charlie's
we can get into
motivations
that.
here, I'm speculating. I mean, I knew him and talked to him a little bit, but I'm speculating a little bit. But my read was always that the number one priority was keeping the coalition together. Like that's what it was about.
Right.
It's an operation to get Republicans.
By the way, almost at the Donut Goal
elected,
Sports Stream Podcast.
And
Those
so
Bridge
I
Beardly.
think that
I know I'm not
think
really doing
Charlie
anything. I don't really
did
deserve any money
really
right now, dude. We're
oppose
just watching
the
this.
12-day
But
war, but
whatever,
not
dude.
exactly for
Whatever,
the same
dude.
reasons
I don't
that
care.
me or you might
Right.
oppose it.
Deal with it.
So like I might oppose it just for moral reasons, like that I just look at it as mass murder.
I'm providing
and
transformative
it's evil
commentary
and
here, though, for
unacceptable.
sure.
And by the way, I'm not saying like yeah, people died during war, but like I actually think that some of
I
your,
deserve it for all the
people did a
content I've
real good
provided
job
this
coming up with
weekend.
that whole just war theory of
You know?
Christianity.
That's
And, like,
right.
there's been great men who have thought about this and like, okay, people will die in war, but you should at least only fight a war when you absolutely need to, not just like, here's a war of choice. Maybe this will work out. Anyway, so I have big objections for that. We both have big objections because it's done on behalf of a foreign country to the detriment of our country. I'm not saying Charlie didn't even have any of those concerns. I'm saying the reason
We'd have to
why
watch this
is my
one.
read.
That's true. I am
think the
providing a
reason
service
why
here.
Charlie Kirk was so
So-
adamantly telling Donald Trump not to do this is
I'm
because
providing
he
a service.
understood the political reality that we've been discussing earlier,
Right.
that this was going to destroy the coalition, that this is just, he had his finger on the pulse. And he also, listen, he had his finger on the pulse. He knew what had happened in the Groyper War. He knew how much, look how much he moved on the issues
Right.
over the years. He kind of had to. You want to keep this coalition going, this is the only way it's going to work. And so I think he knew that this coalition was going to be destroyed by this move. But again, if your primary goal is to keep the coalition together, you say, hey, don't do this. Then when he does it, you go, okay, let me explain why that's still not destroying the coalition.
Right.
Then he does more. You go, okay, no, this is, so like it, like he was opposed to it, but it's a different type of opposition than what me and you are talking about here. Yeah, dude. I mean, look, all we can do at this point is vote for Dan Blazarian, and that's what'll carry us through.
He will save us. Yes.
Should we? Why?
Here we go. Here we go. Finally.
Fighting with Dan Blazarian publicly. I got. Why are you always picking on Jews? It is. It's like, no, it's not
Okay,
that important.
that's
It's
good.
an identitarian that you always have. All
I
right,
found that out. Yeah.
That was just too hilarious. Like I just could
That's
like,
really
dude,
good,
this
yeah.
is fucking hilarious. Well, it was weird. I mean, I guess we could talk about this a little bit. So like I
Dude,
got in a thing with
okay,
him, I think
here
like
we
a
go.
day before you and him started getting in a thing. So then I was like, okay, good. You were my human shield, so I could keep my street cred or whatever. But there's this. So like, I'm supposed to. I think this is going to happen actually, but I'm supposed to debate Hassan Piker. I was in a back and forth with him where we were talking back and he was saying that I accused him of ducking me. And I was like, I don't think I ever said you were ducking me. And then Dan responded to me and he goes, you've been ducking a good faith conversation with me. And okay, so this is just, I'll do mine first and then you can do yours. But so it is true that a few different people, Jake Shields being one, but a couple different people, Sneeko was another one, had tried to connect us before. I knew that Dan Blazarian was trying to talk to me. And I just wasn't really that interested in it. That's just like, I don't know. I'm not like even trying to be a dick or anything, but from my perspective, all I knew of Dan Blazarian was I was like the boats and hose guy who kind of turned into like, what I kind of consider to be like a low IQ kind of Jew hater. Like now, if that's fucked up for me to say, I don't know, however you would do.
No,
but I've seen him on a few interviews where it was just like, I kind of felt, it's not someone like you who we may have some disagreements, but I feel like you're a very smart guy. You're very well read. You're good faith when we have these conversations. What disagreements we have are disagreements. This was to me just like a guy just kind of like crudely denying the Holocaust, kind of crudely going, we should launch a war on Israel, all this stuff. And even the arguments are kind of like, well, they attacked us on the USS Liberty. Like, you do realize that was in 1967, though, right? Like this is kind of on the level of we should fight a war with Iran because they killed our Marines or something. It's like, well, like, I don't know. If we've done business with them for 40 years after that, you really can't, like, still. Anyway, whatever. Debates on this aside, I just wasn't particularly interested. But so he replies to me on Twitter, and he goes, well, you've been ducking a good faith conversation with me. And even the way he said good faith conversation is, me, Nick. It got me to kind of go, I guess. And so I replied and I went, well, I wouldn't characterize it as ducking, but sure, let's have a conversation. I accepted. Let's have a good faith conversation. Okay, fine. And then he goes, I don't know why you're lying about this, man. And I go, well, lying? I mean, I'm lying. I'm just saying, like, no one's denying that you were trying to talk to me. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't phrase it as ducking. I don't know. There's a lot of people who are trying to talk to you. A lot of people are trying to talk to me. We don't have time to talk to all of them. But then I go, all right, well, I wouldn't say lie. then he goes, you've told a bunch of people that you're scared to talk to me. And I go, okay, well, now you're lying because that is yes. What man talks about themselves like that? I've told other people. Like I said to you, Nick, me and you off camera, and I went, I'm scared to talk. And then literally the next comment out of his mouth is, you're a subversive Jew. I always knew you were a subversive Jew. And you're like, guys, look, again, me and you have talked about this a lot. I am not a left-winger. I don't have left-wing sensibilities about bigotry. I'm not allergic to it. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're a little bit of a bigot, I'll still talk to you about that. We're all a little bit of a bigot. Bigotry is something you're always supposed to have a little bit of. You don't have too much of it. It'll fuck you up. But but it's like, dude, how many conversations with how many different people have I had? And good faith conversations where really, have I not earned at least enough credibility to go that immediately, if we have one disagreement, like you scratch the surface and right underneath there is you dirty Again, I'm not going like, good, anti-Semitism. I don't really give a shit. But at the same time, I am kind of, is that from your perspective, is that not unreasonable of me to just go like, all right, dude. So then that is kind of what this is all about. And that's fine. You have a right to feel however you feel. But also I'm kind of have a right to go, this is pretty fucking dumb. And I'm not really interested in talking about this. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's kind of his whole MO is he's just, he's a piece of work. I mean, he is what he is. This whole, and I saw that exchange. I watched it happen in real time, and you accepted the talk. Okay, so what more do you want now? Yeah. He's going to go, well, I don't know why you're lying about, look, you got what you wanted. You're going to have the talk. So what now? And then it turns into the ego thing. Well, you're afraid to debate me. And then you're a subversive Jew. You just go, how is this productive, actually? What's actually your end game? Is the end game to achieve understanding, get on the platform, have the conversation? Or is this about something else? Yeah. So, I thought that was pretty messed up.
Well, and then there was this other thing, and I think this is more a dynamic that you've commented on too, and then I want to get into kind of your...
I can't wait to see Dan's reaction to this. Another meltdown, probably.
The kind of little mutiny that you put down last week. I've been watching that. It's kind of interesting to me, and I don't exactly understand it. But then he goes, like, after the subversive Jew, that, you know, I'm like, oh no, the boats and hose guy thinks I'm a subversive. Yeah, I'm subverting society. Okay. Like, what do you think that means? Like, anyway. But so then and then he does this, and because I have been around Libertarian Party politics for some years, I'm not as involved now, but I was very involved at a time.
Dan got a white nationalist libertarian to both agree that the fact that he's a retard. I think everybody can agree. I think everybody on the planet can agree he's a retard.
And you're like, wait, what? Okay. Wait, you're doing something? What are you doing?
Right.
You're primarying one of the absolute worst, most grotesque, just utterly disgusting members of Congress in a district that you have absolutely no shot of winning. Like you're talking about there's a reason why he's the guy who won that district, right?
Yeah.
Right.
What does the voting demographic? Okay, yes, it's old boomers and a lot of Jewish boomers. Okay. Dan Blazarian, who doesn't even live in the district, because you lived there as a kid or something like that. You're not doing. But this was a thing I found all the time in the Libertarian Party, where there'd be some guy who's running for something who's like, we're on track to get 3%, and the last LP guy only got 2.5%. But they'd still have this attitude of like, I'm actually doing something.
Right.
What are you doing? Just talking into an audience, and you're like, I don't know, I'm reaching more people with your message than you could ever hope to reach. And so like, yeah, I think it is actually doing something. And I don't like, what is this like air of superiority that just running a losing campaign is somehow really contributing? This is really getting out there. This is preposterous.
Yeah, well, it was a group of them that said that to me. They did this whole conference the week before him and I fell out called America First United, and the whole premise of it is we're out here doing something. We're running for office. We're holding a conference, and I want to say, okay, so you're running a shitty conference with production issues that makes us all look like idiots, and you're losing primaries. I'm like, please stop. Like, you're doing something. Stop doing what you're doing, because it's a waste of time and money, and it's actually hurting us. Like, it's a liability. But you know what it is? It's like a lot of these people, if we're gonna act like they're in good faith, let's presuppose they are.
Sure.
A lot of these people get into the movement and they act like they're the first people that ever got red-pilled. Okay, now the reinforcements have arrived. All right, what are we doing to defeat the Israel lobby? What are we doing? Seems like we're not making a lot of progress. Guess I got to take matters into my own hands and run for office. And you want to say, okay, do you know anything about politics? Are you going to win? Are you going to, and I talked to Dan about that. And I talked to Aaron Baker, who's running in the same district. He talked to their campaign manager. They got no plan. There's no strategy. I want to say, Dan, the average age of the Republican primary voter in your district is 57 years old. Trump carried that district by 30 points. You're running as an anti-Trump, exterminate Israel candidate from Las Vegas. You don't even live in the state, and you have no money, and the primary's in 3 months. What's the pathway to victory there? And, what they say is like, well, I don't know. We're just going to go in and we're just going to win. I'm like, see, that's the difference. It's like haste and energy, enthusiasm, whatever, fanaticism is no substitute for, what's actually doing something? Raising money, learning how politics works,
Did the color
doing the hard work.
Did you guys notice
but
that?
I really think it is just that zeal of the convert. That's what it comes down to.
I think you're right about that. And I've seen, there's a thing, and I know you can
like the color temperature has changed. That's weird.
Look, like you read books. And that
or maybe
is
it's the
actually
lighting or
something
something.
that
Did the lighting
like,
change?
the wheat from the chaff. There's actually a lot of
They
people
turn off
who
a light or
talk about
something?
politics for a living who just don't know anything about this.
Booth Kuiper's sitting in Morse code.
When
Yeah,
you do, like when
Morse
you're obsessed
code.
with this and you read
He's
books
like,
and you read.
watch
Beardson
Beardson Beardley.
without ever talking to you about this. I was talking about this with Mike and Natalie earlier today. But you're always 10 books behind. There's always a stack of books that I should have read all of this and I haven't.
Right.
You know what I mean? And authors that are great authors that I know I want to read their book, but goddamn, I just got to read this other thing and then I got to read the news all day and there's this thing that happens. My buddy Louis J. Gomez, hilarious comedian, and he has a bit about this in his act's really, really funny. But he was always a big tough guy, my whole life. He was always the guy if someone says why don't we go outside and see who the fuck's up now? And then he started learning how to fight. He started like taking jiu-jitsu and boxing and he was like, I am so much less confident in my ability to fight now that I actually know how to fight. Because as you know how to fight, you also learn how many people know how to fight better than you. And you become a blue belt, and then you realize every purple belt can kick my ass. And then if you're in some confrontation with a guy at a bar, you'd be like, I really hope he's not a purple belt because this guy might fuck me up. But anyway, likewise, there's this thing where like the more you learn, the more you're aware of how little you actually know. You know, you read one book on a subject and you feel like you know the whole subject. I just read 300
self-awareness,
pages on a subject. Then you read 10 books.
These people lack
like,
any sort of self-awareness,
dude. I don't know
dude.
anything about this. So you're constantly in this world where you're like, fuck me, man, I don't know anything. Sometimes I reread a book that I read once and then I forget shit that's in it. And I'm like, God damn, I don't even know what I know. Forget all the shit I don't know. And then someone comes by who's read no books and they go, you don't know what you're talking about. And you're like, motherfucker, I know I don't know what I'm talking about, but you really don't know what you're talking about. And dude, I got a lot of this when I was in the Dan Blazarian thing where you see it's people who were red-pilled this year lecturing me about how you're just unwilling to have conversations about the JQ. Like, motherfucker, I have taken no end of shit over the years for being super willing to have these conversations. You don't know what you're talking about, you know? And so I do think that's a lot of it.
I do really like
this rush for everyone. You learn something, it's like this new power.
Why have I completely forgotten his name?
I want to go tell it to everyone. But there is a bit of a responsibility to like actually
I actually really do
like
like
homework.
Dave Smith a lot.
Like this isn't that easy. You got to work at this. And
I do. I'm a big fan.
A lot of them, it just seems to me, are like really operating on like the most base framework of like, it's about the Jews and you won't admit it's about the Jews.
He's really, I mean, he's
I remember there was
he's
one,
a good dude. I like him.
I saw a show you did after our last podcast. And I had said at one point there on the last show that I was like, you know, I've never completely been convinced on the JFK or the 9/11 conspiracy. Like, I've read enough to like ask some questions. But I don't know. Like, there's 50 different theories about who exactly had JFK killed. No question, him and Ben-Gurion were beefing, and he was trying to get nuclear inspection. No, look, maybe that's the answer. 9/11, the dancing Israelis, if you look into it, it's pretty fucking shady. High-level Saudi involvement. Anyway, I'm just not completely convinced. Maybe it is Israel, but I'm not convinced. And then someone was saying to you, like one of your super chats, was like, he's clearly controlled opposition because, look, he doesn't believe this, and obviously that's his role. And you went, either that or it's a difference of opinion. Like, that's also possible, too.
Right.
And so you just have a lot of this kind of low-order thinking. People are very excited with this new idea, but the problem is, like, you actually don't have the background on all of this information. Like, you don't really know the details here. There's a lot of that.
That's exactly what it is. And that was part of how him and I fell out, is because I met him a couple of years ago, and he was all gung-ho, wanted to talk about Hitler and the Holocaust and all this stuff. And we started to have this divergence, let's say, around the time of my debate with Dinesh D'Souza, which was about a year ago. I think it was June last year during the war.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember I debated Dinesh. Everybody loved the debate. They all said I did a good job, you know. I remember Steve Bannon loved it. He wanted to play it on his channel on Rumble and everything. And Dan texted me and said, well, you know, it's all just about fucking Israel. Israel's the one that caused the war. You should have just said that. I'm like, well, you know, I did say that. I said, however, the argument that people are making is that Iran is this like nuclear breakout state and blah. I said, so in order to convince people about this, we have to sort of address that. We have to deal with that intellectually. He's like, well, it's just fucking Israel. I got it. And it's like, okay. And then it was on Tucker Carlson and a few other interviews. I did these interviews and he texts me and says, are you controlled opposition? You never talk about the Jews anymore. I'm like, me? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, your last few interviews. I said, I believe we touched on that in Tucker and on the Jack Neal podcast. He goes, yeah, but you didn't talk about it enough. I'm like, so am I supposed to sit there and just the entire thing is going to be, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, every interview the entire time? And for them, the answer is yes. And even about running for office, he said, you know, I want to run for office. I said, oh yeah, what are you thinking? I want to run for governor. I'm like, what are you going to do about Israel from the governor's mansion? I said, that's a statewide office. That doesn't deal with foreign policy. I said, you should run for a federal office because that's where you deal with those things. Well, I don't know. I just think it's like a good platform, blah, blah, blah. And I would always tell him, whenever we get in a fight, I would say, you know what, Dan? Call me when you're ready to get serious. You know, I said, because you don't know what you're talking about. You're not even interested in knowing what you're talking about. You just want to go on Twitter and tweet the same thing every day. And even when he'd call me on the phone, he was always giving me the speech about how the Jews did 9/11 and JF. I'm like, Dan, I know. I red-pilled you. I red-pilled a lot of people. Like, You're preaching to the choir, man. What are we doing here? So, yeah, it's a very frustrating phenomenon, this red-pilled yesterday thing.
Well, it's and yeah, look, I mean, look, I feel like even when me and you have these discussions,
Darius
sometimes I feel like we're talking past each
no
other,
news,
and
just say
sometimes
being
there'll
loyal.
be. I've felt that way a
Thanks,
couple
King.
times.
Thank you, man.
when
Appreciate
you've,
that. Thank you for the 3, buddy.
responded to
Love you,
things
Darius.
In our ceasefire, in our loosely held, and our ceasefire has held for the years. It was tested a few times. Where I feel like we're talking past each other. But like with these guys, I'm just like, what are you even saying? They're like, no, you keep saying it's the Israel lobby. It's the Jews. He said at one point to me, he goes, I think it was him, maybe it was someone else. But they go, now see, you blame the government of Israel and the Israel lobby, but you don't blame the real culprit, which is Jewish supremacy. And I thought, okay, so like when someone says, oh, it's Israel, no, it's the Jews. It's just like, well, what do we mean? Like, what exactly are we saying here? And when you say it's Jewish supremacy, I mean, I go, look, Jewish supremacy is certainly a thing. There's really no denying. Go listen to some interviews with some settlers in the West Bank, and like, yeah, okay. So like, there's no question that's real. You look at some of the Epstein emails, you could see he certainly had it. That is a real thing. I'm not denying that.
Well, because the problem is, the difference
every
is
group has some supremacy in it. And then there's kind of like light.
The problem doesn't stop at the country of
like
Israel. It doesn't
being
stop
a
at their
spectrum,
borders, and that's sort of.
There's always someone who's just like, my grandma makes the best meatloaf in all of the town or whatever. And obviously, just with any religious view, there's always like a tinge of supremacy to a view, because like, if you're a Christian, then you kind of inherently believe that you have it right and other people have it wrong.
Yo!
And that they're kind of going to face some consequences for having it wrong. And so, like,
thank you, Darius. Appreciate it, man. And we hit the goal. Thank you, guys.
Amount of it where you're not looking at other people.
Thank
like
you, Darius. Appreciate it. Big shout out to Darius. Love you, Darius.
When it gets to a level
buddy.
like a settler on the West Bank who's going, no, these are animals, and the idea of discussing Palestinians having rights is like if someone were to tell me or you that like this rabbit has right, like, what are you talking about? This is like ridiculous. Okay, that's a really big problem. However, to say it's not about Israel or the Israel lobby, it's about Jewish supremacy, feels a lot to me like a like kind of a left winger, like going like, well, no, the problem isn't any of these policies, it's racism. And you're like, yeah, but now you're kind of just fighting like a ghost. Like, like, how about it's about the policy? Like if we were alive in 1845, we should be.
I do disagree
slavery,
with Dave on this,
not
to a certain
white
degree.
Supremacy or whatever. Like, who cares what thought someone has in their mind? In the same sense, like, who cares if Dan Blazarian just doesn't like Jews? Like, whatever, that's your right to have that.
I think he's sort of taking
tell me if
the.
you think I'm wrong about this.
Yeah.
I do think that level of Jewish supremacy that I've seen out of settlers in the West Bank, that you read in the Epstein files, this is something that I've never encountered amongst Jews, like in my life. Like the average Jew that I knew in Brooklyn,
it's not
or whatever,
even necessarily like
supremacy. Maybe you would have like a little
per
bit of a
se.
tinge.
It's
of
like I think that's like kind of a bad
Jews
way to
did
phrase
this
it
and Jews
too.
did that.
It's Jewish
But
power.
never
I mean, that's really what the problem is.
And this person who's not a Jew is not human. That they are like I don't know. I've just so I actually don't really think that's the main problem. And then also, as we talked about last time, I mean, look, there's obviously first off, there's lots of Jews who are atheists who are involved in all of this. And there's lots of, at least self-identifying Christians who are involved in this too. And it's not because they believe in Jewish supremacy. It's because they believe in a whole lot of other things that we would disagree with. But does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree. And what I would say, because I always disagreed with him, he would always say, the fucking problem's Jewish supremacy. And like, they can't even find the words for it. They can't even find like the right, conceptually, they don't fully understand it. And so he would always go back to, if you watch any interview, it's the same speech. Well, in their fucking Talmud, it says that, fucking blah, blah, blah. And that's why Israel wants to kill everybody and whatever. And it's like, yeah, I know that article that you're talking about. And I kind of know the premise. And I would say that, what makes Judaism different is that, one, it's an ethno-religion, because it is based on that maternal lineage. So that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it is that it's not universal, it's exclusionary. So Christianity and Islam will both say, if you're a Muslim, all you have to do is say the Shahada, which is, God's the only God, Muhammad's his prophet, you're a Muslim. If If you're a Christian, it's baptism, Eucharist, whatever, your sect is. It's one of the sacraments, or it's the baptism, or it's even saying Christ is my Lord and Savior, I'm saved forever. So they're universal, and they're not ethnic. So anybody could be Christian, anybody could be Muslim. Jews, however, have that ethnicity, and there's no conversion. And what's more, there's different prescriptions. For Jews, they have to follow the law. For non-Jews, they have the Noahide laws. And the non-Jews don't have the same expectations because Jews don't believe they're capable of agency. Like the religious Jews don't think they really have culpability in the same way, but to your point, not every Jew's religious. And even the religious the early Zionists were not religious Zionists. They were secular Zionists, which is a very important distinction. And so what I would say is the religion is a very important part of Jewish nationalism, Jewish culture, Jewish identity. Even, for example...
Well, that's why even the secular ones used it. Right?
Exactly.
Like,
Well, and Leo Strauss is a perfect example. Strauss was a follower of Baruch Spinoza, who said, the Old Testament's all fake. But Strauss said that, like, in Israel, they should teach the Old Testament because that's, like, who we are. There's, like, this deep contradiction that at once he was a secular humanist, but also he really believed in the importance of, like, Jewish tradition and sort of saying that you believe it even if you don't really. And I would really say the real problem, to pinpoint it, it is something to do with Jewishness or Jewish nationalism, in the sense that it's this self-advocacy for a separate and distinct tribe. It's this competing identity that, like, let's say, for example, Israel is actually a project of American and European Jewry. It spawned from the organized Jewish groups and money and political influence of Jews in New York and Jews in London and Jews on
no
continental
question
Europe.
about that, sure.
And so to me, there's like a superstructure where Israel is just a part of a larger umbrella that is transnational, and what binds them together is that they have this Jewish identity. And I saw there was something from Bill Maher the other day. Bill Maher.
Oh, yeah, I saw this. This
you see
was
this?
Crazy, dude. Yes.
But he kind of vindicated me in a certain way, and maybe Dan for that matter. He goes, and he's obviously a liberal, atheist, degenerate, pervert. I mean, he's as progressive as it gets. No, not religious in any way, shape, or form. And I don't even think he's a Jewish supremacist per se. However, he says, Hassan Piker, Nick Fuentes, they're all crazy. Dan Bilzerian's an exterminationist. Tucker and Canis, Nick Fuentes, they're terrible. He goes, the professors at Harvard, they say things that would make Hamas blush. He said, and Israel exists because anti-Semitism will always be around. And you sort of see how, like, there's a self-reinforcing thing where, like, Jews feel like they're under attack, so then they become more insular and more tribal. That's why we need Israel. And so that's sort of the tension that's always existed, is in an open society, can the Jews really be entrusted with tons of influence because they act as this group, and they're never going to see themselves as part of this propositional identity, like,
clip that.
Well, I'm just an American, or I'm German, or because they're always going to say, yeah, but my grandma was Jewish and we were persecuted.
So that I agree with everything you said up until that last sentence. Up until they're never going to see them, because I actually
they're unassimilable.
Well, I don't think that's true, and I think actually that it's already
Dave has a vested interest.
I mean, if you just look at
saying
like
this
a lot of that stuff.
This is where, like
in the same way, like if you saw with Thomas Massey,
the rub happens,
the poll where they showed by age, and it was so crazy because like 70 to 80, he's like negative 55, and then like 20 to 30 is plus 55, and just so much of our politics almost breaks down by this age group, and it might even be 50 and under, although like it changes with it. But the young Jews have like totally rejected almost all of this shit, and in the same way as young people around the country have rejected Israel over Gaza and their influence on the U.S. government. I mean, dude, Mamdani won here.
That's true.
He took like 40% of the Jewish vote. Like for the I don't know. I know we talked about this last time. I know on the war in Iraq.
Is this Dave show? When's this from? This is live.
Like, but that's
well, not
really
live. It's premiering right now.
But I'll say the kind of the connection to the Holocaust, which is just in general kind of true, just gets more and more distant with the years. And there is a huge gap between like even my parents' generation and my generation, and how like kind of emotionally attached to that trauma they are. And then of course from that trauma comes all of the, kind of propaganda that's built on like, that's why we need Israel. And that's why the lesson forever is World War II, no matter what. So I disagree with that. I do think there's like where I guess I would agree with you is that I do think, and I think I call this out pretty regularly on my show and on other very big platforms, that you can't do that, Jews. Like, that's kind of my message to you. You can't be 2% of the population and have like hostility against the majority of the population. You can't like have this game where it's like, hey, we got to all like let down our tribalism, but I'm going to keep my tribalism. And so I agree with you on that. And there is a degree of that. But at this point, I guess, like at this point in time, right? Like, and you're absolutely right that like organized Jewish groups were the ones who were pushing Zionism and pushing for the creation of the state of Israel and organized Jewish finance and, you know, things like that. But at this point, we're well beyond that. And at this point, the Israel lobby, it doesn't really matter that Ted Cruz isn't Jewish or isn't a Jewish supremacist. Like, it doesn't matter.
But the problem is,
it's still perpetuating the whole system. And
they
then you
still
have a lot,
are going to take advantage of that
system.
system. That's the thing. It's like,
so it just seems
even if they don't believe in it, and even if they don't want to engage with that sort of side of it.
Obviously, as you said, I remember, speaking of talking past each other, I saw this one clip,
they're still going to benefit from it. Like, they're still going to see, well, okay, I can still benefit from this. So, like, I'm going to engage with it and propagate this system because it benefits us.
Both of you guys, you know?
You
but so you were
so that's kind of the problem.
Responding to him, and you go, yeah, Tucker, like, you're making this point that, like, oh, we can't believe in blood guilt. We can't believe that in collect. And you're like, yeah, no kidding, dude. I'm Catholic. Right. Like, obviously, I know this. But then you go, the point I'm making is that you can't remove Israel from Jewish identity or from organized Jew. But then my response, what I just thought was like, yeah, but who amongst us is denying that? Like, I don't think, so like, I think in a weird way, you kind of guys are both agreeing. Like, I don't think, obviously it has something to do with Jewish identity. Like, I certainly wouldn't sit here and argue that like the neoconservatives' Jewish identity had nothing to do with why they wanted to support Israel. Obviously it does. What happened with you and Tucker? Like, cause you guys had the show.
Right.
It seemed like you guys were kind of at least reasonably cool. He got, I mean, mountains of shit for having you on, and then it seemed like you were offended in kind of the way he handled the aftermath of all that. Is that right?
Well, he was calling me out. I mean, we did this thing. I thought we were cool, and maybe not even cool, but I thought we sort of understood each other. And then he started going around and saying the same thing in every interview, which is, well, I went out there to confront him. I don't agree with his anti-Semitism, and I tried to get him to see the light because I told him about blood guilt. And I said, well, that's not really true. Like, you did not bring me out to confront me on anti-Semitism, and I told you at the conversation, I don't believe in blood guilt. And he would say, oh, and I failed. He tried this intervention, and I went away still hating Jews for being Jews. So I said, that's not really true. And then this little speech kept getting worse because he was doing the rounds on all these interviews, and it went from like that to then it turned into, well, I wanted to let him talk so he could expose himself. You know, some people, if you confront them, you're going to make them look good, or, you know, you give them an opportunity to defend themselves. He said, I wanted to basically give him enough rope to hang himself.
It was the
let him talk, and then you could see how bad he is because he beats up on women, hates women, and he believes in blood guilt. And I want to say, dude, we had dinner for hours and hours. It was nothing but friendly. We had the interview, super friendly, as he was attacked for. You know, he didn't give a lot of pushback. And then he texted me the next day saying, hey, man, great interview. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I said, so that's just kind of two-faced. And so then I just responded and said that's just a lot of BS, and I think that's dishonest.
Yeah, now look, I get what you're saying. You know, if I'm trying to be fair about this, I do because I get it too. Also, believe me, I've had a lot of situations where if I feel like someone's kind of slighting me, and then also there's this weird thing that we have in our world of like having shows where like, because like sometimes I've had things like say where even like someone who's an enemy, I don't think you consider Tucker an enemy really. I think you're. No, maybe. You do? Okay, fair enough. But someone who like Dave Rubin will be talking shit about me. And then I'm like, well, now I got to talk shit back about you because that's the way this game works. It's like you're saying this publicly. It does feel sometimes when you're in that position where you're like, hey, you're kind of like weaponizing an audience against me now. And my only tool in my toolkit is to do the same thing and try to send them after you. I guess I would say that maybe this is where I think you were being a little bit unfair, but tell me what you think. I saw that you were upset that he referred to you as an anti-Semite after the interview, but I've also seen you refer to yourself as an anti-Semite. And so I guess sometimes there's like a little bit of a thing where, you know, even like when I like whenever I say Dan Blazarian, I go, look, this Jew hate thing is like blah, blah, blah. And then they'll go, what are you supposed to mean Jew hate thing? I'm like, well, what's the term? Like I thought that's what you said it was. Does that make sense to you? So I think I would say this. Tucker is
it's because when we say it,
and you can tell
it's
that influences.
How do you explain this? It's like
what generation you're born in really does.
We say it sort of tongue in cheek, right? It's sort of shorthand, slang.
And there's things that.
But when Tucker says it, he means like legitimate anti-Semite. This person should be
older than me,
killed, essentially. Like that's what it means. And when we say it, we mean it is the same way like say I'm racist. I'm not really racist, but by the definition that society would ascribe, which is a ridiculous definition, it's clearly overblown.
At least the way I took it.
Yeah, I would fit that term, but I don't consider myself like an actual racist, you know?
Compared to like, does that make sense? That it's like if you kind of already now look. The thing that makes it tricky.
We're sort of just like leaning into it, so to speak, but it's not like what our actual beliefs are. But when Tucker says it, he means that he's like, this guy's an actual Semite that hates Jews. That's the big difference.
When I saw you clarify the statement of why you said I love Stalin, and once you clarify it, you're like, that's not even anything controversial about what you're saying. But you did say it in the most provocative, controversial way, right? Like, so you said, right. And you kind of like to do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but you like to do that. You kind of get a kick out of being like, I'm going to provoke. And part of the business we're in here is that we're doing shows. We're entertaining people. So that's also part of it. But when you have made all the jokes and you have referred to yourself and you have said things like, what happened to this movement? I thought it was about hating Jews and hating women. That's what I signed up for. Now I get that that's funny. And
that's awesome.
But I think once you have said a lot of things like that, it's a little bit harder to then get offended if someone characterizes you as hating Jews and hating women.
Well, it's not that I got offended.
Okay, sorry, whatever word, to be annoyed, let's say.
Well, I think he's a liar. I think he's a liar and a two-face because that's just not, and what's more, I think he knows exactly what he's doing because he would go around, he said other stuff too, like he comes out and he goes, well, I had him on because he was attacking my dad and my wife and my kids. And it's like, no, I didn't attack your dad and your wife and your kids. I just said, you called me a Fed. Like, let's get that clear. He went on Candace Owens or had Candace Owens on his show and said, I think Nick is like David Duke. He's a CIA agent. He's a Fed. And all I said was, oh, really? I'm the Fed? Your dad ran Voice of America for the CIA. He was a Reagan appointee. So that turns into, you attacked my family, and that's why. And it's like, so that's a fucking lie. And then he goes into, it wasn't just like, well, he's an anti-Semite and I'm not. It turns into, it was this intervention / I was going to expose him by letting him talk. It was this like little trick where I'm going to let him talk and say all this controversial stuff, and then he's going to look like an asshole. And then he goes and says, I'm irrelevant. You know, then last week.
Did he say that?
Yes. In the New York Times. Why are we talking about Nick
Fuentes?
Oh, yeah, but he's irrelevant. Then he said it again.
I don't think he meant that you're irrelevant as in you don't have. I mean, look, I don't think anyone would say you're irrelevant at this point. I mean, I guess in a sense, we're all irrelevant. I think he was. Maybe I'm wrong, but I did listen to that interview and I had a different takeaway. I think he was making the point that like this is a giant distraction now, which is a fair point. That like, guys, it is ridiculous that there is so much talk over like Tucker had Nick Fuentes on. I mean, it was just like especially when like there's a war going on right now and you're talking about like whether you talk to the wrong people. I get your point. I can't listen, I don't know.
Again, totally disagree.
If I were in,
because he made this point several times.
I just want to say, I think he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
People like to think it's like we're two people. We're not two people. We're two political actors. He's a political actor with his own agenda. And I think everybody recognizes he's an operator. He plays dumb on his show. He's smarter than people give him credit for. He talks to the leaders in the Gulf countries and UAE and Saudi and Qatar. And he's an operator. And I think, let's be honest, I think he brought me on the show to do something, to neutralize me. Either to hurt my reputation or to bring me on side to whatever him and Vance are doing or something like that. It didn't go the way he thought. Yeah. And now I think he's sort of resumed where he has been for years with me, for 3-4 years, which is he thinks that I'm preoccupied with race, religion, too anti-Semitic, whatever. And so now he wants to be dismissive towards me. So I think it's like, it's a little more strategic than maybe you think.
Perhaps. I mean, I've spent time with Tucker and had long conversations with him. I think he's a genuine guy. I really do. Again, I could be wrong about that, but that is my perception. Like if he's acting, he's doing a really good job.
I think he's doing a bad job. He asked me what is porn. I'm like, you're asking me what porn
No, but
is?
that's the thing. He sets up questions like that. That's almost like an old interview style in a way. I think that I will say this, where I agree with you, and I said this last time you were here, which was before I knew you were going on.
What is porn?
You told me after we recorded.
Hey, Grok, what is porn?
Oh, shit, I didn't even realize that. But he was wrong to call you a Fed with Candace there, and I just think that
Guac, what is
that really is all
pornography?
N-word. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you really shouldn't throw that out unless you're coming with some type of receipts or some type of proof of that stuff. And you know, literally, I don't know. All I know is I'm not a Fed. Like that's all I know for sure. That's all you know. Like any of it, we always don't know, and we kind of wonder. But there is something about that accusation, which is it's fucked up because it's the same thing that like leftists would do, where they go at your intentions instead of taking on your argument type thing. Like if you were to start making, if you went to any college today and just started making an argument about like average IQ statistics, they're trained to not even hear what you're saying, but to immediately hear what your motives must be. The only reason you could be saying this is because you are secretly some type of Nazi who wants to do, you know what I mean? And so like there's the point of the accusation of bigotry is to get people to dismiss you without hearing what you have to say. Right. I think it's also the you know what whether it's the intention or not, that's what accusing someone of being a Fed does too. And so I don't think people should make those accusations unless you've got some reason for making them, or so, you know, like, no, this is why I really think. Now, Tucker obviously was a figure of the establishment, and yes, his father was in the government and all of that, no question. And yes, he goes and meets with leaders around the world, but also, you know, he's been the #1 rated cable news show for many years, and now one of the biggest podcasters, debatably.
Yes, the CIA would never employ somebody.
That doesn't really seem to be evidence of anything to me. Like, yeah, maybe they would.
Television.
I'm sure they would like to.
The CIA has nothing to do with television.
On that level, who was advocating against a U.S. war or something like that. No? Am I being hopelessly naive?
Well, I would say it's a, you know, it's a pretty big story with Tucker. The dad was at Voice of America. His Tucker's nephew works for Palantir. The son works for Vance. And
I don't think anymore.
No, not as of a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Tucker got $15 million for TCN from 1789 Capital, which is...
is that true? Is that real?
Yes, from Omid Malik, and Chris Buskirk, who's a Teal guy. That was like Teal's main guy, which is an offshoot of Rockbridge Network, which is a Vance project. And Tucker said he consults Peter Thiel before every major life decision. He's tight with Joe Kent, who's a CIA officer. Everywhere you look, and listen, I'm not trying to say he's a Fed. I'm just saying he's something more than he lets on. He's more of an operator. In other words, let's just say he's not just some dude fly fishing with his fucking dogs in Maine, hanging out with his checkered shirt.
Well, he does do that too.
Sure, he does it, but like he makes it out like he's just one of us. And some kid at the Turning Point thing said, your net worth is $50 million. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, don't believe everything you read on the internet. It's like, sorry, your net worth is $20 million. Like, it's a difference without a distinction. So I think there's something going on there. And I will add to that, you say about the Fed thing. Yeah, it is like, it's bad faith and it's dismissive and it's aimed at your credibility. It's like, don't listen to this person.
Booth guy. He's
but
cracking
he also
Booth
came
guy
back
so
in the
hard.
New York
It's so
Times
funny.
piece and said, kind of the same thing he said to Megyn Kelly also, which is Nick Fuentes is a useful tool of the regime. Why? He said because there's a right and left consensus that the economic and foreign policy of the elites is not working. He said, and the only thing that matters is economics.
Yeah, we gotta get
Those are going to be the most
show.
impactful, resonant issues in the future among the younger generations. He said, more so than immigration, race, or religion. He said, so someone like Nick Fuentes is a convenient diversion because if everybody's talking about him and his ideas, which are race, religion, demographics, whatever, he said, then no one's going to talk about why
we're getting close.
Investments are taxed less than labor.
I think we're getting
close
to
the
the end.
capital gains tax is lower and more easy to manipulate than the tax for like a W-2 person on income.
I got stuff to do.
So this is like an actual ideological political divide where he really believes that
stuff to do. I'm sorry.
If only the white identitarians would get out of the way, if only the so-called real anti-Semites would get out of the way, then the sort of like left-leaning economic populists like Tucker and Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur and all these people could get together and we could elect some kind of like populist ticket or something. And so there's something very specific he's saying. It's very precise. And I think it lines up with he is 100% behind the political trajectory of Vance. They're asking about Vance, and he goes, they say, when's the last time you talked to him? I don't know. Days, weeks, months? I have no idea. Why'd your son get fired? I don't know. Ask him. Really? You don't know? I don't know. And it's not cool that you're asking me that. People are out to get JD Vance. Really? Who? I have no idea. Like, and moreover, he said, I'm not going to answer these questions.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to hurt JD. And, you know, my interview with Nick is going to hurt him, blah, blah, blah. He's 100% behind Vance, and I think that Vance, going to NatCon, being a part of that thing, he represents this kind of like left economic populism, populist nationalism thing that he thinks I'm in the way of, which is convenient because I'm against JD Vance as well in particular. So
yeah,
to me, that it's like there's a real battle going on. It's not a misunderstanding.
Well, I'll say this without, you know, like I don't like to give away private conversations, but I'm not saying anything Tucker said. I'm just saying what I said. But I was very clear with him the last time we hung out that I was like, well, I go, and I maybe said this partly because I wanted to kind of see his reaction to it, but I was like, well, the JD project is over, you know, and I went, no, there's no way. I mean, come on, none of us can support him now, and it doesn't even matter if you wanted to because he can't win. It's over. And he didn't bat an eye at it. It didn't seem like it was like a problem for him. Now, again, that doesn't really prove anything because maybe that's still his plan for down the road. And he's like, okay, well, that's the issue right now. So I will say this. Yeah. Fuck JD Vance. Like there's no, well, I'm just saying like, that's it, dude. You can't be listen, it was already a long shot that JD Vance would ever be capable of doing this, to be honest. I just, like, as we were talking about before, on a pure charisma level,
yes,
JD Vance just doesn't really have it. And don't get me wrong, he's smart in a way that Donald Trump isn't smart, you know, like, and he's good at like, in a more substantive way, dealing with like a hostile CNN you know, host or something like that, where he can actually kind of make points. Right? Donald Trump would just have slogans and dismiss them and win with bravado, but he can actually get in and argue. But he's just not a charismatic figure. That's just, which is kind of a prerequisite for leadership. You know, like it just kind of is what it is. But being attached to this administration, I think that's all over. I think that it is possible here that you and Tucker are kind of talking past each other. And I think that there's, again, keeping ages in mind, there is something where, look, obviously, like I am, I guess, to some degree, an economic populist, but with a very different economic program than, say, a left-leaning populist would have. I think that there is a point, a real point.
I think Dave's trying to be like a peacemaker.
The regime doesn't like focusing on economic realities. And that really is at the heart of a lot of what the problem is in America. Now, those economic realities are a reality because of other problems, so it's complicated. But, you know, like the fact that the average first-time home buyer is 40 is death to a nation. Like that's, if you have that, then me and you talking about social conservatism is just a fucking exercise in futility. It doesn't matter, dude.
Yeah.
The 25-year-old guys can't afford to get a house. You know, like you have to be you in order to afford to get a fucking house at 25. Maybe not at 25, but now you could. Whatever. I don't know when you were allowed to make money again. But I'm just saying, like, so I do think that, like, I understand the perspective of thinking that, like, look, these kind of, like, racialist issues and culture war issues and all of these things, they do distract from the fact that the entire economy is rigged on behalf of the powerful and is absolutely just devastating young people. And I do think that that's, I think you speak to a lot of that. I think that's part of the reason why in this time a voice like yours is so popular and powerful.
The
is
dark
because,
horse.
like, yeah, like
the dark
a
horse
lot of the
needed.
people you're talking to, and I think you're talking to older people as well at this point, but a lot of the people you're talking to are the ones who are dealing with this economic reality. And so I get his point from his perspective, perhaps thinking that, like, yeah, talking about like race and stuff like this is a distraction. I also think that there's a desire that I also share. This might be part of my generation too, but there's a desire that I have. And of course I'm Jewish, so it's hard to ever be the one. I'm not going to be the one who will ever convince people of this. So I accept that. But there's a desire to be like, hey, dude, you can really oppose Israel. You can really oppose all these wars. You can really oppose all this shit without getting into some ugly shit where it's just like directed at people.
Right.
And I understand that that's not what you're saying.
No, I agree
you're
with
not
that.
saying like This, in fact, I've heard you,
I mean, I agree with that.
without being asked, just say on your show that I'm not saying it's all Jews, and I'm not saying there's anything like, and you shouldn't be, I don't know, you shouldn't be shitty to any person because of an immutable characteristic, and you've made very clear that everyone should be protected under the law and things like that. But there is an energy to your movement that I think it just, you know, like you talk about low IQ anti-Semitism. That's not unique to you or your audience. All of us have our low IQ portion of our audience. There are low IQ libertarians, believe me. I've met them. I've called a lot of them out. There's low IQ Democrats. Most of them are low IQ Democrat, low IQ Republicans, all of this. But there is something about, and I'm not blaming you for this, but there's something about the low IQ anti-Semitism that's a bit more dangerous than the low IQ libertarianism. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just going to be someone making goofy arguments about whatever.
They're both bad. Low IQ libertarianism is you guys get on stage and you strip naked
against a group of people.
I think that's far worse than a guy being mean to Jews on Twitter. Okay, I'm sorry.
I mean, I would say that we fight me and the Groypers are very much not low IQ anti-Semites. I think
that's true, but by and large,
yeah,
I think
because
that's true,
and even with this schism in the past couple weeks, I mean, I don't know that any of my supporters went with Dan Bilzerian and Jake Shields. Like, you know, for example, Dan said on Sneeko stream, we're going to exterminate Israel. That's something I would never say.
Yeah,
And that's something that my followers, I don't think, would ever say. And if they believe in that, then they could go and support him. But I will say that it is a clash of civilizations. I do believe that on a fundamental level, it isn't just about a power disparity like this kind of Marxian lens. It really is about identity. And, you know, for example, you got guys like Shabbos Kestenbaum. He's not powerful. He's that kid that's suing Harvard, that Jewish kid who spoke at the RNC. It's like there's a lot of these guys that
I know who you're talking about. Right,
yeah. And I would say even further, like, as long as there's that element in the coalition, there's always going to be this expectation that we're paying lip service to that. There's always this expectation. To me, it's kind of like an all or nothing proposition. Is it America first or is it not? And in any case, I don't know that it's even, I don't know what the danger is. I haven't seen any Groypers go out and do anything.
No, I guess, listen, I'm not trying to, overall, I think the Groypers have been very fair to me over the years. You know what I mean? And so, like, my feeling about, generally speaking, is like, generally, like, they're cool. I mean, you know, the Groypers are a huge group at this point, so it's impossible to, like, completely characterize, you know, all of them. I guess it would just be like, well, I know I saw, listen, I don't know. I just don't understand. Again, this is my age. Like, there's some things where I feel like someone like you, I kind of like, okay, I'm kind of interested in you. I recognize that you're important and you're smart. And I'm kind of like, okay, let me kind of figure, you know, out where you're coming from. But then, like, I see guys like, okay, I can't remember his name. But the guy who, you know, the looks maxing,
Clavicular?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't understand how this is real. Like, I just can't even wrap my head around, like, this actually exists. It's not made by AI. You're telling me this is, and then, but okay. So leaving that aside, that was kind of not the point. But who's the guy? The builder, Bob the Builder,
Chud
the Builder. I'm sorry, I'm fucking real. I swear to God, I'm not like acting like I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm old and I don't understand this shit. But that was one, and I did see your take on this, which I very much appreciated. This was one of the things that I really gave you a lot of praise after Charlie Kirk died, and you really had this very serious message on your show where you were like, hey dude, like, if any of you out there are thinking that, like, oh, I'll go do something violent, I totally reject you, I denounce you. Like,
no, he's not bringing me up.
It's really important to have, like,
a
guy who's a
no.
radical,
I don't need any more,
politically speaking, like, being like, hey guys, like, no, we're not going down this path. And I did appreciate that you also kind of called this out. I think these are things, listen, I give you credit for this because I think it's an integrity move. I think sometimes it goes against your incentives. Like, it'd be easier for you to just not have to deal with that and go, yeah, fuck you. It's free speech, bro.
Right.
If you want to go call black people the N-word to their face, that's your God-given right or something. Now, I'm not even commenting on the actual criminal case because my understanding of this is that it wasn't when he was doing a video. It was like some other time, and he didn't actually provoke this guy. I don't know. We'll see. But there is, I don't know, there's something worrying.
I'm 15 minutes ahead, Dave. Just endorsed you for president. Let's go.
There's something worrying about society more broadly.
Let's
when
go.
You're kind of like, guys, what are we doing here? Like, you're going at, first of all, like, even whatever opinion you have of black people, like, how about just an opinion on like manners and decency and like why are you creating a
Now I have to watch
situation
it till the
here?
end.
I also
You're just baiting me to
could,
watch this
in
whole
fact,
thing to
me
the
and
end.
Mike, our producer, we were talking about this earlier. I actually can make like a advanced libertarian theory argument for why I think the black
of course,
people
Sonny.
have
Sorry
the
you're
right to
suffering,
punish
man.
for saying the N-word. And I don't mean that. I don't mean to be a dick. Like I believe in the
imagine, dude.
non-aggression principle as a libertarian.
Fully
but,
endorsed
like,
Beardson.
I genuinely believe if I walk up to a man with his wife on the street and I walk up to the two of them and I go, "Hey, sir, your wife's a whore."
Dude, it
I
is
believe
88
that I
degrees
have
outside today.
consented
I'm
to a
not
fist
going
fight
outside
with
today.
that guy. Like in the same sense that if you go to a restaurant and eat the food, you've made an implicit contract that you have to pay them now for this food, right? Like in the same sense, I
It's
do
just like,
kind
who's this
of
guy with
look
the
at, like, I
beard, the
don't
retro
think
game guy,
you're a
Beard
free
Saint,
speech warrior.
No,
if you're going, oh,
you
are
guys
you
are
going to ape out?
joking.
Are you going
There
to
ain't
chimp
no
out
way.
on me? You're kind of calling this
Shut the
dude an
fuck up.
animal
You
to
know,
his face
I'm not
in
falling
front of
for
an
this bait.
audience. To me, that's a challenge to a fight.
I'm not.
You know, I don't know. Do you? How do you?
I do, yeah, and that's where I think me and the Groypers are actually.
Shut the
I
fuck up.
have said this for a very long time, and for a long time, people didn't even have a clue what I was talking about. They thought it was ridiculous, but we actually are a moderating force in a very good way, in the sense that, you know, people do look to me as the radical, the dissident, the guy for those issues. And I am a Christian. I am Catholic. We are against that stuff. And so, like, I think, for example,
package
last
delivered.
time we spoke,
You're back.
there were those Goyim Defense League guys in Florida. They were shooting Jewish people with water guns.
Yeah,
And I said,
yeah.
that's not going anywhere good. And now it's this situation with Chud the Builder. And yeah, I'm getting a lot of hate for this. I'm getting shit on for it. You're right. People are saying, oh, he's a free speech martyr. He's a warrior, whatever. And you want to say, yeah, I mean, do we want to live in a society where everybody's a public nuisance, live streaming, challenging everybody to a fight? And it's just not nice. I mean, the hill we want to die on is that if people commit crimes, they get arrested, and people are considerate and polite in public. You know, we just have, like you said, decency and manners.
The drop
Not that
is
we're
here.
going to, like, yeah, I could say the N-word to a person's face, and if you get
Boom.
mad, that's your
Package
problem.
delivered
It's like,
today.
I don't think that
Let's
was
go.
ever actually the
Stoked.
struggle. Like, that's
Yeah.
not actually the civil
Stoked.
rights battle of our time.
That's right.
It's more like, just don't freak out at Spirit Airlines, you know, like, just
Yeah.
use an indoor voice.
Well, by the way, I agree with you about you being a moderating force in a lot of ways. You know, and not in all ways, but like in a lot of ways. And that's kind of the point I was making about the Charlie Kirk thing. I think there's a real dynamic there, right? With like, even with Trump, you know, when people would make this argument a lot in the first term, where it's like, he's not the river, he's the dam.
Oh, brother.
Like he's here because there's this, you know, this environment that's rich for him. And
Nice
I
beard,
do
though,
think,
so it needs to be longer.
Yeah,
It
like
can.
people wanna, you
I like-
know,
I
oh,
like
we
to keep
should
it trimmed
take
up
out
for the
Nick
heat.
Fuentes. You're
It's
like,
too hot.
yeah, wait till you get the Nick Fuentes 2.0, who's not a Christian.
Right.
You know what I
Yes,
mean? Who like
and they're
really
out
might
there.
really might be ready to be like, yeah, I don't care. I
Yeah.
don't have any of these restraints on me that like you're not allowed to be violent or something like that. No, I agree with you. And in fact, by the way, with this one, with the Chud the Builder guy, I said libertarians also taking a hard liner on it, because it may not be like they love him because he's racist, but they're the free speech absolutists, and of course they're libertarian autists, so everything is black and white, and either you're for free speech or you're for this. And that's my role as the libertarian daywalker, is to be like, well, actually, guys, I know you've got your theory on paper down, Fred, but there's also this thing called like human nature, and that's also very important to deal with. I think, yeah, I mean, I think you're right that there's just, with a lot of these things, also some of it can just be reduced down to like, guys, what is productive about this?
Right.
What is going to help? Like, this actually doesn't make things better. And yeah, getting in people's faces, squirting water guns at people, whatever it is, it's like, this does remind me a bit of even, say, like the left-wingers. Remember when it was throw a milkshake?
Yes.
And they would kind of, they would very intentionally make it like, what, are you mad about a little milkshake? And you're like, dude, first of all, you fucking throw something at me, like, I might assault you. I don't know, like, but and also then you don't know what's in the milkshake, like all these things. But you're like, yeah, this is a really dangerous game to start playing, and it does feel like we got a little bit away from this threat of like woke leftism. Part of this is, I think, is because of the wars are more distracting to them. So now they're like against the genocide, and it makes it harder to be against Nick Fuentes.
Right.
When you're against the
Yes.
genocide, and he's also against the genocide, but he's the bad guy. You know, like it confuses them a little bit. But yeah, I just think it's a really bad path to go down. And I don't know anything else about this guy. I don't like root for him to go to jail for a long time. I hate the fact that his life's ruined over this or something. This is just bad all around. But at the same time, you also, and I think this is something you get that some of the others do not, is that, well, first off, there's like being righteous, like be the good guy, be
Right.
the one, be right. And then you don't have to, and then there's also just optics where you're like,
Yes.
dude, how do you
Yeah.
think this looks to everyone else in the fucking room? Like if you've got an argument about like Jewish supremacy or the Israel lobby or whatever, like make your compelling argument. But as soon as you're the guy who's doing that shit, almost any decent person who maybe otherwise would have heard your argument is going to go, dude, this is just not for me. I want no parts of this at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I like what you said. Just be the good guy, like, and I said it
Yeah.
on my show. Like these scenes that are being created are not good. Like these protests, the public nuisance, live streaming. It's just like this big circus. Everybody's yelling at each other. Everybody's in each other's faces. Everybody gets arrested. I said, and ultimately, who is this good for? Because Chud the Builder himself, his life is over.
Yeah.
He's destroyed. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll let him off with some of these charges, but he's got a baby mama and a kid. Their lives are destroyed. Everybody around him is annoyed by this. If you go in public, you ruin everybody's day. And then, it just turns into this big, ugly public spectacle that divides people. And look, you're going to divide people no matter what, but I think that you got to do it by doing the right thing, and I'm an advocate for especially my young audience to just simply rise above. Just be the best version of yourself, be an ambassador, be a representative of your views. Be Christian, go out and be forgiving, be benevolent, return antipathy with kindness. Like that's how we actually make the world better. I don't think we make the world better by becoming worse, or resorting to lowering ourselves to the level of our enemy, our worst impulses.
Yeah, I agree.
That's kind of my message.
Well, I love that. I think that's a great message. Okay, there's a couple more things that I want to ask you about. Mike, how long have we been going for? 2:40? Okay. You good to go a little longer?
Sure.
Okay, great. Okay, so I wanted to ask you a bit about I want to ask you about Sneeko. Because you and him are kind of like the two guys I know in that world. Like, well, I don't know, in my conception of that world, whether this is accurate or not. And I know you guys have had like a little bit of a falling out. I haven't seen the whole thing.
Yeah.
But now, again, I don't know.
Bro, who's the guy
Sneeko
spamming
super
Gooner
well.
stickers? I thought that was one of you
but
guys.
I like the guy. He seems like I think
Really, he's just in here just
I think I met him
spamming
in
Gooner
person
stickers like crazy.
once.
All right.
And then I've been on his show like a few times, but we text occasionally and stuff. He was one of the guys who's trying to connect me with Dan Blazarian. That didn't work out. But so like, I know that I don't know all the details of like your guys' friendship or falling out or any of that stuff, but it did just because I know you both and I kind of like both of you, and I was just like, oh, that's almost like kind of a little bit of a bummer that you guys aren't friends. I thought you guys were boys. What happened? But I don't know. I guess maybe there's been more to it than what I know about. But are you guys cool? Are you not friends now?
I don't know. I don't know where we are right now. We're kind of off and on. We're always fighting. It's always over stupid personal stuff. And the latest thing is I was supposed to come out here and I was going to do a collab with him, or at least I thought I was. But he doesn't want to collab with me because he doesn't want people to think he's taking my side over Dan and Jake. And I said, bro, I'm not even asking you to take my side. I said, let's just do a collab. But he doesn't want to alienate all his other friends. I said, well, ouch. Like, if you were, he was fighting with the Tates not too long ago.
I saw that.
Yeah, after the Club Accost. I would have went on his stream after that. But so it always turns into something like this. And,
that was dirty, though, dude. I mean,
yeah,
what the
it
Tates
was.
did to him was fucking dirty.
It was
and I
dirty.
got just full disclosure on what did you call it? Club
Accost.
Club Accost. Okay, that's great. Club Accost. Okay, so here's, by the way, my entire take, which I believe I texted this to Sneeko the day I said something like, I said, Adam from PBD and the Tates are being gigantic. Clubs are gay. Don't ever go to them again. The song is funny. Like, that was my take on the whole thing. Was just like, it's like, I don't know what you're doing in a club, Nick Fuentes, but like, don't go to clubs, dude. Like, what are you doing? It's the worst place on earth. It's the dumbest. Listen, I didn't like clubs even when I was young. But whatever. I will say this. This is my perspective on it. I don't give a shit at all about playing the Kanye song. The fact that that's a controversy has got to be one of the dumbest controversies ever. Like, first of all, it's Kanye West. Like, I don't know. It's Kanye West. He's a fucking icon. Like,
Right.
It's not like... Also, the song is clearly hilarious. Like, it's just... it's almost like, what world are you living in where you think like this was a real... Like, I don't know. It's a hilarious song that is clearly like... it's almost... it's the equivalent of like, well, maybe you won't like this comparison, but it's the equivalent of like Marilyn Manson ripping the Bible on stage. And in some ways, there's something kind of interesting about it because you're kind of showing, no, this is the real religion. You know what I mean? Like, this is the real religion that you actually worship. So I'm just like tearing up your holy book because I believe it's bullshit, you know? So I thought that was also, it's whatever. So I didn't care. But there was something that I saw in the little bit of that stuff was when there was like it was like Andrew Tate and his guys. And they were like, so
why did he
from
get
my
timed
perspective,
out? Dude, I feel like I have to like
I
patrol
look
you
at
guys.
you and Sneeko, who I like. I look at the Clav, who I don't believe is real. And I just go,
spamming emotes.
I don't know. I don't fucking
That's all
understand
right. We don't
exactly
gotta
what your
time
culture
out.
is.
That's
It's a
fine.
different culture than when I was young.
Hold on, time out.
But then I see these like
It's fine.
40-year-old guys.
It's whatever.
They are with you. First of all, 40-year-old guys being
Mods are on it today, dude. Mods are on it today. Mods are not dealing with this.
My humble opinion. But then I literally see them like trying to
The guy
school
spamming the Gooner stickers, that was
20-year-olds
deserved,
about how you should
for
never
sure.
listen to a woman. What are you doing having a conversation with them? And I actually, so just from my perspective, I don't give a shit about the Kanye song. I think that's pretty funny, actually. I think that is fucking disgusting, dude. I think it is fucking disgusting to be a man in your fucking 40s, a glorified pimp, essentially. And what you're imparting to the young guys is like, yeah, dude, we don't listen to these bitches. Like, what are you, 17, dude? This is how I talked when I was 17. Like, then you grow up and you're like, yeah, actually, I do listen to my wife. Yeah, like, we actually have conversations and stuff like that. I know, it's so cringe. It's gay, I know. But, like, I don't, and listen, I know you're young and you don't have a wife and a family yet, you know? I hope you get one at some point. I also understand, like, your life is a particularly wild one, and so, okay, fair enough. I would still highly recommend it because it's the best thing you'll ever do in your life. Is get married and have a
Yeah, you
family.
lost me on that
But,
one.
like, there is something about like older men kind of like discouraging that in younger men that I do think is like profoundly wrong. Okay, so that's whatever. That's my little rant on that. I thought it was really fucked up the way they threw Sneeko under the bus on Patrick Bet-David's show. I shouldn't say they. I guess it was just Andrew who was on the show. But then I think his brother did the same thing. Where you're like, dude, once you go there and do it, you just got to own that you did that. You can't come back and go, well, I didn't think it was a good idea to play the thing. It was Sneeko who did it. And I just thought that was really fucked up. Like, either you're going to all go down for the, not go down, no one's being affected by this, but either you're going to all take the week-long controversy or you're not. Or you can apologize, and you can, if you want it, if you feel like you did something wrong, you can. But like to throw the other guy under the bus, I thought that was fucked up.
Well, yeah, I would just say to Sneeko that he should just try unifying with them. I think he should, because that's, you know, when Dave Bilzerian called me a Fed, Sneeko texted me and said, you know, you just need to focus on unity. Charlie Kirk was a unifier, and that was his strength. So I'm going to say the same thing as Sneeko. I think he should just unite with Andrew Tate, and, you know, it's kind of his fault that Andrew attacked him because he's looking for leadership. Sneeko needs to step up and be the leader.
All right, so you're mocking
being attacked.
Sneeko's hypocrisy on something here.
But about the club, here's what I will say about that. And about Andrew Tate in particular. You know, it is true, though, that there is just this epidemic of simping that's going on. That's the only reason.
No question.
Because I, you know, as a Christian, I'm also in favor of having a family, and, you know, Christians are pro-woman on some level, I guess. You know, they're more pro-woman than, like, let's say pagans on some level. But, you know, they say that in an environment where all the women are whores. They all gaslight, all lie. And so men do need to kind of wisen up to this. So, you know, I do.
Question.
And what's more about the club, I mean, the way it came together, we were all just hanging out. We were at this party, and we were like, wouldn't it be funny if we brought Nick to the club? Like, wouldn't, because it's like me, and I'm like
kind of hilarious,
autistic person, whatever. So they're like, we're going to take him to the club for this first time. Fuck it, let's just go. And we went. And yeah, I hate the club. The club's like an evil place,
awful.
satanic, like just destroy all clubs. Den of whores, you know, like I really, you know, so yeah, I will not be returning. I don't see the appeal. I go, I don't get it. Or I went, I suppose. I don't get it. But I don't drink. I don't.
It's for dumb people. The club is for dumb people. Yeah, it's like meet someone without having to talk to them. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's inherently kind of like just like a weird sport. Like if you're at all a guy who, like, even back in my single days, if you're a guy who, like, your game relies at all on, like, I'm going to be witty or charming or funny or I'm going to be interesting, then the club's the last place you want to be. Like, the club's like, I got nothing to say, but I got abs. So you want to, like, rock with me? I don't know. No, listen, I get
rock
the point,
with me.
That
Hey,
no
girl,
question, right?
do you want to
There's an
rock
epidemic
with
of
me?
simping. I completely agree with that. I guess part of this, and I think this is almost a generational thing too, is that I think about 90%
I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna
of
try
like
that line out.
the like, let me blow your mind with this take of the manosphere is what in my day was just common sense to all 15-year-olds. Like, yeah, you don't wife up a whore. We all knew that. Like, yeah, she's a hoe. Like, she's for
Daniel
hooking up with. She's not for
Dangerfield, are
taking
you
serious. Like,
you
know what I
listening
mean?
to
So
this right
maybe
now,
this is-
Daniel
maybe
Dangerfield?
this
Are you
ancient
listening to
wisdom has
this?
been lost, and it must be like given back to the
Paging
young
Daniel
men.
Dangerfield.
But, like, it doesn't. It's just like with all this shit, man. It doesn't have to be this cartoonish overcorrection where it's like, therefore we should all be pimps. Like, all right, I know.
No, we should.
I
We
know.
should all be
How about
pimps.
this? How about
We
like,
should.
yeah, if a chick's done OnlyFans, don't be in a relationship with her.
It's a good
That's
start.
a deal breaker. She can't be a prostitute. Okay, yes. Again, I don't know. Whatever Jesus was cool, you can forgive her. Don't marry her. Okay, that's my advice. But also like the cartoonish other. I see this a lot with like the TradCon kind of thing, where it's like you're not really doing the traditional thing. You're almost doing like a funhouse mirror version of the traditional thing. And I think that if you want to have a movement that's like pro-white and pro-traditional conservative values or things like that, it's like, okay, but they believed in things like chivalry and decency, and they would have never talked the way that you talk. Never to a woman, they would have never talked that way. Now, look, it's a different time, it's a different age, different techniques are going to be necessary, but I just think the idea of like, I don't know, that just, it really offended me, like the idea of trying to convince young men to be like, yo, fuck all these bitches. It's like, why isn't it like, find a good woman? There are still good chicks out there. They're not all whores. There's good chicks out there.
There's
dude.
most of them.
Sparingly
Yeah.
few. Sparingly few anymore. It's rough out. You don't know what it's like out there, Dave. You know,
well, look, I mean, there is some degree of that.
It's bad.
I don't know what it's like out there.
The same thing with Tucker. It's like Tucker gave me shit for that, and it's like, bro, you married your high school sweetheart in like the 80s. Like, that's crazy. But
it's a fair point. Well, it's a fair point. I mean, I've been with my wife for a decade, about. We were married, it'll be 8 years this year, and then we were dating for a couple years before. So, like, I've been with her for like a decade. So, like, yeah, I have not been a single guy since kind of a different time. I had pre-Me Too, pre-Donald Trump, or the very beginning of Donald Trump, or whatever. Like, I don't know, it is a different culture, and I was not on dating apps, and Instagram wasn't a thing. And, believe me, I had not, even when I was in high school, like, even the slutty girls, I feel like never would have been like this. Like, the idea of like they would just like post pictures of their ass was like that was not a reality in my like, you had to hook up with a girl to see her ass. Like, you didn't just get to see. So granted, it's a different world. I will say I can understand you being like pissed off about Sneeko being like, oh, I don't want to like have you on the show. That seems like a strange position from him. But I also think that like I think he was done dirty in the club.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I just say that because I'm just trying to repay.
There you go.
I'm just trying to pay it forward. You know, I do agree with that.
All right. There's a couple other things that I wanted to talk about.
This is really endorsed me for president, right?
Venezuela. I think we really disagreed on this one.
Damn it.
Yeah.
So I want
to. You guys really got my hopes up. I really thought that was real and going to happen.
I don't know exactly what your take was. I was like kind of told.
I can't believe it. I think you guys lied to me.
You were for the war in Venezuela.
I don't think you were 15 minutes ahead at all.
By that. So what is your position on that?
I'm all for it. I believe in the Monroe Doctrine. I believe in hemispheric defense, and I think it's legitimate. I think it was
talking about my stance on Venezuela.
Low cost, low casualty, brief intervention. That in the end,
will
is
the
a huge
campaign survive this? I don't know.
For,
this is going to be tough.
Reasons, which is we're going to be able to go in
tough.
there, increase their oil output, and then take the oil. And then we also get Cuba to boot. John Ratcliffe was down there negotiating with them, and I think that's all legitimate. If you were fighting in Iran, that's on the other side of the world, and they've been preparing for this war for 30 years. They got 190 million people. Venezuela, Cuba, that's our backyard, and that's where all our shipping occurs. Mexico's our number one trading partner. That's the Gulf of America, and Russia and China are spying on us there. China's building all this dual-use infrastructure in Latin America, the Caribbean. Russia has military partnerships with these countries. So I think that's one of the few instances where you can say that's legitimate use of American power.
But what is the connection to the Monroe Doctrine exactly? Because I see a lot of people invoking Donald Trump, kept invoking it, but I don't really see how it's even consistent with the Monroe Doctrine. I mean, number one, there were two parts to the Monroe Doctrine. Everyone seems to forget the second. And the second part was that then we won't interfere over there. So we're certainly not following that part.
Right.
But the Monroe Doctrine essentially said that there can't be any more European colonies here, that you can't colonize any more of our hemisphere. There were already European colonies at the time, but they were like no more. But that's a lot different than just maybe they do some business with some people we don't like, or maybe there's some, like loose, I don't know, connection to a foreign power. That doesn't seem like the Monroe Doctrine said we can invade any country, whatever. We can go to war with any country we want because it's in our backyard. So I don't think that's exactly right. Also, but it's not like the Monroe Doctrine is law. It's something a president said a long time ago. But I don't know. I don't think it's consistent. I would also add, if you're going to say Venezuela was low cost, I think you got to add the Iran war into that cost on some level.
No way.
I think there's no question that the Venezuela strike being such a success is a big part of why Donald Trump was primed to be convinced that he could have another big success in Iran. And I think coming off that big success, it did seem to really encourage. I'm not trying to remove blame from anyone else, but it did seem to encourage him that, like, yeah, you can do this. You can be great. You can be tremendous and awesome with the military. I don't know. I guess when we said earlier, when we were talking about the war in Iran, and I said, like, look, part of it's a moral issue for me. Just like, you can't keep murdering people like this. How is it? And I don't like to be the guy. I'm not a Christian. I don't like when non-Christians like try to lecture Christians about Christianity or something. So I'm not like lecturing, but I guess I don't see, like, how is it consistent with Christianity to almost like, if you have a view, let's say, look, some people died in the war in Venezuela. Well, or Cuban bodyguards or something. I don't know. Not that many people died, but some people died. And if it is like, let's say something's in our hemisphere, it's good for us. We could go kill them and take their shit, and then we'll have their shit. You get my, like, how is that consistent with Christianity?
Yeah. Well, can we get into the Monroe Doctrine stuff as well?
Sure. Whatever you want. Yeah.
So, as far as the Monroe Doctrine is concerned, if you look at it, it has evolved over time. And it seems that it has evolved as America's become more powerful. When it was promulgated originally, we really had no Navy, and so no ability to enforce it. And there was a corollary added to it in the late 19th century when we became the preeminent superpower in the Western Hemisphere that basically said, we are the sovereign of the Western Hemisphere. Our edict is the law. Like, whatever we say goes. So it is consistent with that. What's more, Venezuela and Cuba are effectively influence from Russia and China in the same way that a colony from France or Britain would be in the 19th century, because they produce missiles, they have spying posts like intelligence operation, they've got dual-use infrastructure, and so it does actually represent Chinese and Russian influence in our sphere of influence. So I would just say that. As far as the Christian angle is concerned, I don't think it's very clean, because in the era of strategic weapons and intelligence and all the modern technology, it gets a bit convoluted what constitutes national defense, because there's really is convoluted layers, as you know, of strategic thinking about.
Dude, I ended up doing a 6-hour stream. This is crazy. I wanted to do a short stream
cyber
today,
weapons
dude.
and intelligence agencies. So you could say, like, reasonably speaking,
and you guys haven't super chatted me in so long.
Has some kind of Russian-Chinese spying post on it in preparation for some future global war. It is theoretically in self-defense to try your best to neutralize that. Now, that doesn't give you carte blanche to go in and like, well, let's just kill everyone in Cuba, because we could do it. But I think within reason, you're able to conduct these kinds of extraordinary operations that are outside of what would be considered like a just war.
20 more subs, I think, would be good, and I'll be good.
Because whatever. And in the case of Venezuela, it was so limited.
20 subs.
So it's really, I wouldn't even call it a war, even a military operation. We just extradited one person who happened to be running a country that is a criminal enterprise.
That's the
Venezuela is a socialist dictatorship, and arguably they are like a criminal regime. Socialism's against the Catholic Church.
But what makes a criminal? From my perspective,
runs on like human trafficking.
They're all criminal regimes. But but like, I mean, to different. Some are worse than others. But like, what makes them a criminal regime?
Like, they make money off of kidnapping is huge there. Like, people get kidnapped all the
it's
time,
horrible.
and pay to release the hostages.
No, but
and-
I mean, you mentioned dictatorship, but you don't believe in democracy. So, like, that, I don't say dictatorship to me wouldn't seem like that would be a bridge too far for Nick Fuentes.
But there's good dictatorships and bad dictatorships.
Okay.
Point being is, like, if you want to use the moral angle, it's not like this was some kind of, like, decent humanitarian regime. Like, this was
I agree. Listen,
corrupt regime.
Listen, I'm the libertarian, so you've got me convinced. I am no fan of, like, the Maduro regime or the Chavez regime or anything like that. I guess, like, the updated just war theory that you just laid out just seems to me to be vague enough for the Israel lobby to drive 10 wars through. You know, like there's they're in connection with another country. They could, I mean, the nuclear issue is not an issue with Venezuela or Cuba. I mean, to me, I think Donald Trump has celebrated how wonderful this is, claimed it was a regime change, claimed we're in control of the oil now.
Wearing my
Now, of
Monday
course,
Night
for
Raw
other
shirt
factors,
today.
but
Thank you.
Americans have only
Beardson,
seen an
love you.
increase in
Thank you, buddy.
oil costs
Appreciate it.
since then.
W shirt. Let's
what
go.
seems
Thank
to
you.
me to have been accomplished
Thank
by
you for the big 20, big
war
dog. I appreciate that,
is,
Chino. Thank you so much,
pretty
man.
brutal energy blockade of Cuba. I mean, this is a little island that's been destroyed by communism.
I mean, just the truth of the matter is the world's just a better place with Venezuela under our control.
States of America.
More oil and resources will flow.
The Soviets aren't bringing
Or
nuclear missiles to
silicon.
Cuba. They're trying to get a ship full of
It's a Russian
oil.
submarine off the coast.
Well, they were trying to move
It's
oil.
it's overall a
allowed,
better
them
a
to
better
do, which I think was
situation
good
for
move
everybody
when
that
starting
we-
a war with
we
Russia over. But I just
deposed Maduro,
again,
you know?
I think that like again, these are your people who came up with the just war theory, right? Like these were all Catholics.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
I think it was all Catholics who came
Yeah.
up with this. But the idea of at least having some like. I understand the like when Thomas Aquinas and those guys when they're coming up with just war theory, they're clear and they were very well aware of this. That
Oh, I think
they're
it was-
balancing different things, right? Like you're balancing Christian ethics and then war, which is a very difficult thing to right. There's like the worldly realities of these wars, and
Yeah,
they're
that was
attempting.
Augustine, but whatever, he's
to
Jewish,
go,
it's
look,
fine.
Obviously, Christians can't accept killing someone and taking shit from them. So like, here is the only way that it could be justified is if it's a defensive war, you're attacked, you fight it proportionally.
Hey,
something
thank you,
like
Cass.
that. I just think
Cass
saying that like
Beardson,
this
28
regime
for
ran
president.
off of like
Thank you. Appreciate
you know,
that.
criminal activities. I mean, it's certainly true.
Thank you, Cass. Appreciate
but
it, man. Thank you for the big
I don't know,
super
it just
chats,
seems like a
man. No, I
justification
appreciate you
to
guys.
start a war anywhere. At
Thank you,
any
Chino.
time.
Thank you, Cass.
And I
Thank
do
you,
worry about
101K.
that because that's those justifications are almost always used in very bad ways.
I would just say that, again, it just gets to be a bit convoluted because the nature of warfare has changed because of strategic weapons, like when I say nuclear weapons, I mean Russia and China are nuclear armed, and that means that
I don't want to
we're kind of engaged with them in every way at all times.
Thank you. Thank you. W.
As long as those weapons exist, we're always going to be spying on them. We're always going to be in some virtual state of conflict with them. And that is global because, the whole basis of the Monroe Doctrine is nobody can touch us because of the oceans. Well, what our adversary is going to do, they're going to try to get on our side. Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Bolivia, whatever. Or, even building the dual use stuff in every other country, Argentina, Peru, Jamaica, Haiti, whatever. So I would classify that under something like self-defense. And with proportionality, like I said, we're not saying like, and by we, I mean me, I guess. I'm not saying like we can go to war with Venezuela and like invade their country and take their sovereignty, take all their supplies. I'm saying, though, that if they're aligned against us in our hemisphere in a way that's threatening, we should be able to go in and change that. If they want it to be better, they should just align with us. You say, well, Cuba's this tiny defenseless island. Okay, well, then you better submit to Washington because you're right next to the superpower, and they're playing games.
Saying you better submit to Washington is how we've got the whole situation in Cuba for 60 years.
It's a nuanced position. It's a nuanced position.
And if they want to avoid that, if they want to avoid a war, then they could always choose a diplomatic option.
So could all Israel.
For my opponent to beat me, no.
But Israel can. I would say that's a different story.
That's crazy.
Because,
okay, but that is true about
crazy
both of them,
back-to-back super
I mean, I don't
chats.
know. I guess I just think that I think essentially my take on all this shit is that and I think this is right. I know this is kind of like a boring. There's just not the energy to some of my views that there are to yours because this is just. But I think that the bottom line here kind of is
he's violating the non-aggression principle,
or even close to it. Like, you just can't afford this. We're living under the biggest government in the history of the world. I mean,
we violated the NAP.
It really is.
I'm a libertarian. We violated the NAP.
Washington spends every year. And,
yeah, okay, bro.
we
get
can't afford
it.
the
Libertarian
entitlement programs, let alone the world empire. And so we're $40 trillion in debt. And that's not even representing it, because even the
Dude, I
even
literally
our
don't
entire
care
tax
about
base,
debt.
plus the
Dude,
$40
I
trillion
don't
in debt
care
couldn't
about
pay
debt
for the
at
size
all.
of government. And so we just
I
have
do
to print
not
the
care
money
about
to
the debt.
make up the difference.
I like the
And
literally
we
could not
printed,
care
I
about
know,
debt at
you
all.
might even know some of these numbers better.
Who's
than
going
me,
to
but it's
collect?
like,
Come
what is it,
collect it.
since George W. Bush, I think we've created like 80% of the money that's ever been created. We're just printing trillions and trillions of dollars. This is how we've essentially
I hate it so much,
band-aided
dude.
over this bullet wound of an economy.
Shut up about the
And
debt, bro.
because
Who
of this,
cares?
this is what's destroying essentially the currency. It's what's making life unaffordable for young people and working class people. And if you're going to continue to debase your currency, you're going to continue to see the life like this, where, you know, it really does destroy any hope at having a conservative country. I don't mean just conservative like in decent values. If young people can't afford to start families. And all this stuff about like kind of looking for another war and another war when they're, even as you describe it, this isn't a war of necessity that you're describing.
Like,
You're
debt is
describing a war of
diplomacy,
choice.
too.
Like,
That's the
maybe
thing that
things would
these
be
freaks
better
don't
if we
understand.
fought
They
this.
just want us to
I
have
just think
zero
it's really
debt.
bad
It's like,
policy to
bro,
allow our
debt
government
is
to always be in
diplomacy.
search,
We are
as John
buying
Quincy Adams
foreign
would say, of
favor
another monster
with our
to
debt.
destroy.
Like,
You know,
it's,
these people do not. And I think this is one of the
we
fundamental
have to be
problems
in
with
debt. Like,
government
that's the
in
way that it
general,
works,
and it's one of the
dude.
problems
I'm
with the
so
Trump administration and all of this.
sick of
is
hearing
that
about debt.
These people, as you said at the beginning, they are not on our team. They're not working based on our incentives. They're working based on their incentives. And if you
So if
give
I have
them
$40
that
trillion,
type of
who do I pay? You
power,
just pay me. You
I
can
mean,
pay me.
to just kind of
Actually,
say,
I'll take care of it for you. Don't
anywhere
worry.
anyone's interfering that maybe
You give it
could
to
be
me. I'll
strategically
take care of
bad
that
for
for
us,
you.
we can go fight a war there. I mean, man, the military-industrial complex is gonna be like, okay, we got some thoughts.
I'm saying that from a moral point of view. From a moral point of view, as long as, because I think the case could be made, like, for example, you know, in the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, would you say something like, well, Cuba's a sovereign state. They're allied with Russia, so they're putting nuclear missiles to defend themselves. You would say, no, that threatened us. It's too close.
I really
and
need
the
a
same goes
millionaire.
even,
I need a millionaire to watch
you know, for
me
other
donate
conflicts
me,
that have happened in the
like,
world. I think morally
$1 billion.
speaking,
That'd
it
be
just gets
so
a bit more
sick.
complex because of the nature of how things
I'd love
are.
to be a
And I would
millionaire,
take it a
dog.
step
That'd be
further and
great.
say, when it comes to, you know,
If someone donated $1
this being a war of
million to the
choice,
stream right
if
now,
you
that'd be
actually look at the
awesome.
strategic situation, we've been
I would
losing
make so much
the
good
Western
content with $1
Hemisphere for
million.
15 years. China's become the #1 trading partner of basically all of Central and South America and the Caribbean. Yeah. And what this does is it allows them then to go in and build all this infrastructure. And that's part of a very concerted play. Like, they are trying to increase their influence.
So
they're building this stuff, and they're building this stuff in anticipation that they're going to put their Navy there. They have 400 times the shipbuilding capacity as us.
Like
they're building deep water ports everywhere, eventually to put their ships. And, like, for example,
awesome.
there's a new technology. They put a missile launch system in a container, like a shipping container, so they could get their biggest container ships.
I'm living in fantasy land now.
That may or may not contain all missiles,
like
or
land now.
Like in Operation Spiderweb last year in Ukraine, they could contain all these drones. So if there's a future conflict, let's say in Taiwan, do you want Venezuela and Cuba to have Chinese spying posts? And do you want a Chinese deep water port in Peru? And they've got all their shipping there, and it's simultaneously surveilling us, but also loaded up with weapons.
Oh, yeah.
That obviously puts us in a big disadvantage.
Before,
you know, it's like that other expression: if you want peace, prepare for war.
Rest in peace.
So how do we check China? I don't think it's a war of choice. I think this is we're kind of getting our act together because we let it go in the Western Hemisphere.
Well, Taiwan's going to have to submit. I think
to China.
Well, by the way, no, I say it kind of tongue in cheek, but I actually agree with you on that one. I think that so you brought up the Cuban Missile Crisis is a good example, and I would certainly agree with you that that is something that is totally reasonable.
The
to
girl
go
from Florida sent me like $20K a few weeks ago.
I
know.
But I can't be expected to.
That's what I need. I need a girl from Florida to send me like $20K.
Go on with life as normal. This is intolerable. But of course,
one of these days, I'll have a 5-figure stream. I've had 4-figure streams plenty of times. Don't get me wrong, but a 5-figure stream would be so sick.
Just Cuba,
10 grand. Oh, that'd be awesome.
Unmitigated disaster.
That'd be so cool.
But this was solved by getting on the phone.
It'll happen one of these days. One of you guys will be rich one of these days.
So you got to move these back, and in exchange for that, we will pull our. What was it from Turkey? I think we moved our nukes back.
That's my
just
dream.
Seems to me like with all these problems, that would be a way better way to solve them. And of course, the U.S. does have tremendous leverage if it were willing or able to use it. Now, this is one of the interesting dynamics with our government, is that it's this giant organization, but it's not exactly like the guy at the top just runs the whole organization. There's many factions within it. And if the guy at the top is going with the wind, he's very powerful. But if he's going against the wind, like, in other words, if the president of the United States of America is the most powerful position in the world, in some respects, if Donald Trump wants to start a war, he can start a war anywhere he wants to. There's really no more congressional, authorization or even war powers or anything. And honestly, does anyone believe, even if they did, if this War Powers Act had passed and Donald Trump just went, suck my dick, does anyone think like that anything would have changed? So if he's starting wars, he's very powerful. Now, if he wanted to destroy the military-industrial complex,
this is the last
he basically
topic.
has as much power as
I think
me.
we're nearing
so like
the
if
end,
you're going
which
with
is great
the
'cause my
grain, you're
headphones are dying
very
again.
powerful. But going
And we're at
against
6
it, you're
hours
not.
in the stream.
But like, for example, if you wanted to end, say, like the war in Ukraine, a little bit tougher now. At the beginning, maybe would, but we have enormous cards we could play. We could say, hey, look, we'll leave NATO. The U.S. will leave NATO. It'll be just a European alliance. You can come in and we'll leave, but you all work out. Like, you could get Putin to stop, but you'd have to give him something, you know? And even as you say this, I don't disagree with like some of the potential issues that you're talking about. And it is a very new world. And look, even as we're watching in Iran, I've been at this for 20 years now, and drones in war were just not a thing. Like, that just wasn't a thing. It was a brand new thing when we had them.
How much to play?
Now all of a sudden, this is a new
Towns
totally
game?
changes
$10,000
when they can essentially close the Strait of Hormuz. If
Right
need
now.
be, just with cheap drones. But again,
10,000.
China's been doing over the last 20 years. Well, we've been fighting endless wars and spending trillions of dollars. They've been doing business with everybody, and like, perhaps
I'll do it. I'll do it
maybe
right now.
that would be,
10K.
if we want to get into that strategic fight,
10K,
that it
it's
would
a done
be
deal.
to, let's do diplomacy. There's a lot of shit that
You
the
won't
rest of
make
the
me do
world
it.
really hates that we do.
You won't make me do
China,
it. I'll never play
when
it.
Donald
I'll
Trump
never play
even
that
just went over
shitty-ass
there
game.
now, right? Like, he
I will
wants
not be
them to
playing
stop
Paul
helping
Towns'
Iran in
game.
whatever logistical intelligence way they've been. And
You can't make
they
me.
want a whole lot of things from him. Like, we can get things, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's just even things like big military mobilizations in Asia or something like that. They have a real problem with that. And so us arming Taiwan or stuff. So I guess my point is just that, like, we could, rather than like launching wars over this stuff, and look, the Venezuela one didn't turn into like a catastrophe, but you risk that every time you launch one of these wars. And I think we would be much better off at just like being smart, being much more restrained, saying, what was the phrase you used? In order to end a war, you gotta, or whatever. It's a peace through strength, essentially. I mean, I've been hearing peace through strength out of the Republicans since Ronald Reagan. I was too young to remember Ronald Reagan, but I know he said it. They've been saying it my entire lifetime. And all we've gotten for it is permanent militarism, forever wars, crushing debt. And so, don't get me wrong, I guess maybe where we could agree, and then we could leave it at agreeing to disagree, is that I'd prefer we be more involved in our backyard and not
I'll do
around
both for
the rest of the world.
10K.
I'd prefer it be
I'll
in
read
our
Dalton's whole
national
book
interest
and
rather
play
than in
Paul
some
Towns'
other
game at the
country's
same
interest.
time.
By the way, I don't even really think any of
For
this is in
10K.
Israel's
Power
interest. I think this is in
I'll do
what
it.
the
I'll
Likudniks
do it.
perceive as the interest of greater Israel. I think they've gotten Israelis killed and probably made them more of a hated pariah state than ever before. But I also think in the same sense, it doesn't really seem to be the way DC works. They're not really working in the interest of the American people.
I agree. I mean, I think diplomacy is preferable where possible, but sometimes it's not possible. And it sounds like a lot of this
new book
root
for
causes.
5K?
It's like when you go to
yeah.
these Democrats, they say, well,
Yeah,
the
I'd do
reason
that.
these kids are committing crime is because they don't
Yeah.
have like
5K,
after-school
I'd do that.
programs. And it's like, dude, they need to go to jail.
That could be some good
Cops need to
content.
beat the shit out
Yeah.
of them and take them to jail. And with Venezuela,
Yeah, for
it's like,
5K, I can see
look,
that.
Rick
yeah.
Grinnell proffered a deal with them.
Yeah.
They didn't take it. I mean, because they wanted Maduro to stay in power.
Really wouldn't want
and
to, though.
our
I'm
sticking
not gonna
point
lie,
was
really
you
would
got to
not want
realign
to.
with us, and Maduro's got to go, and they wouldn't agree to it. So we had to go in and take care of them. And I agree with you, though. I'm a restrainer. I believe in restraint. I think that we should be very selective in our engagements, keep them in our backyard, prefer diplomacy, but sometimes you got to kill people. Sometimes you got to do it.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, but also I think there's a lot going on that we don't know about there, and I think Maduro was all tied in with the CIA and a whole lot of stuff going on that we're not aware of. Okay, I'm glad you prefer diplomacy first. Nick Fuentes, I very much enjoy our diplomacy. I hope this doesn't break into a hot war again.
Ceasefire's intact.
Ceasefire,
Yes.
The ceasefire is still intact. It's hanging on by a thread. It's a lot stronger than the ceasefire in the Middle East right now. Dude, I really always enjoy talking with you. Thank you so much for coming back on, and look forward to doing it again.
Great.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a good one. Peace.
All right. W show. That was a W collab. I like Dave. I mean, I obviously disagree with him on a lot of stuff, but I do like him. I do enjoy him. I think he's pretty good, pretty level head. I like him because he's even though I disagree, he's very nuanced and he can at least like appreciate our perspective. It seems like to a certain degree, you know, he doesn't just completely dismiss us and he's willing to have conversations. So that's really good, and that's really all that you can ask for at the end of the day, you know. That's really all you can ask for. So I do like Dave. I do think it was a really good collab. So W. I'm a little disappointed they didn't talk about my presidential campaign a little bit. No endorsement. Kind of got snubbed there a little bit. But it's fine. You know, we'll get it. I'll earn it. I'll earn that endorsement. So